sitting in the morning sun. I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, and then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh, I'm just sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home.
The unmistakable sounds of Otis Redding, who on this day in 1968 began a 5-week run at number one on the U.S. singles chart with that song right there, of course, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. The thing about it is that Otis Redding wasn't around to hear the song go number one. He was actually killed in a plane crash months earlier, December the 10th of 1967, just 3 days after recording the song. And then on March the 16th, 1968, so a little over 3 months later, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay goes number one and becomes the first posthumous number one single in U.S. chart history, selling over 4 million copies worldwide. We remember Otis Redding with Sitting on the Dock of the Bay to start this show on your Monday morning, the 16th of March. Welcome to the program. Hope you had a great weekend, and thank you, as always, for making some time to stop by and have a conversation with us, engage in the issues of the day. I read a really good op-ed in this morning's Waterloo Region Record about this being an election year. And when we think about the issues that really impact us on a daily basis, those issues, of course, are issues that are the responsibility of our local governments. And yet, I wish I didn't have to say governments, plural, but we are a two-tier municipality after all. But despite that, we tend to have the lowest turnout at municipal elections. The last municipal election in 2022, give or take around 30%. 30% turnout is generous in some of the areas, and it's a wonder. But the op-ed made a really good point about the level of engagement that has to happen just beyond the election cycle. Every 4 years, we vote for local councillors, local mayors, local chairs to represent us, but we have to stay engaged in this stuff year-round, 365 days. It's a year-round effort, and we are a part of that here on the show. So thank you for contributing to it. Great weekend around town. I want to give a huge thank you to the fine folks at the KW Kin Club. They hosted their 71st annual TV auction on Rogers TV Cable 20 on Saturday from 11 until 3. Again, 7 decades of tradition, raising money to help great community initiatives that are supported by KW Kin. We were even lucky enough in the Farwell household to have a winning bid on one of those items, so we're going to enjoy some food and some good craft beer in the not too distant future at Block 3, which was the item we successfully bid on. But you may know that kin clubs across Canada have been huge supporters of Cystic Fibrosis Canada for many decades as well, helping to raise millions of dollars for important research towards a cure for cystic fibrosis. And our local kin club, the KW Kin members, had me join them for a little bit on that auction on Saturday. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for making those bids. And thanks to the KW Kin Club for making a $1,000 donation to our Farwell for Hire fundraising campaign in support of cystic fibrosis research. This is how we get things done, right? We come together and we support one another, and that is a huge amount of support from KW Kin. So thanks to Drewe and to Chris and to Rick and to Brad and everybody. Bill, who was part of that, Frank, hanging out there, keeping us all in check on the weekend, and then that really generous donation from KW Kin to Farwell for Hire. I think, did we just unofficially get our first donation of the 2026 campaign? We probably did. And I am very grateful for it. Kitchener Rangers played not once but twice this weekend at home on Friday night to the Owen Sound Attack. That was a 3-2 win. And then yesterday in Guelph, a 4-1 win over the Guelph Storm. And you know what happens, right? Usually, anyway, the morning after the Rangers played, the night before, we get a little Jack Pridham JP on 5-7T.
Storm are 0 for 3 on the Moose Winooski's power play tonight. Now Pridham's going to steal again. Pridham, and already scores!
Jack Pridham with his 43rd goal of this OHL season. He is one behind Marek Van Acker of the Brantford Bulldogs for the OHL goal scoring lead. Just one behind. 43 goals for Pridham. 3 games to go in the season. It's a long way to 50, but hey, only one behind the OHL goal scoring lead. And then from JP on 5-7T to Eddie Ficetti, Dylan Edwards.
Arquette leads the Rangers back into the zone. Over to O'Reilly. Back to Arquette. The stick tied up. Another chance. Edwards. They score. She ain't pretty. She just scores that way.
Apologies to the Northern Pikes on that one, but it was a scramble around the net. The Rangers had so many chances, and Dylan Edwards, a.k.a. Eddie, little Eddie Ficetti for you on the show this morning after the Rangers posted the 4-1 win in Guelph last night. Back-to-back weekend wins for Kitchener. 7 wins in 8 games versus the Storm this season. I love you, Guelph. You know I love you. I'm opening up my arms real wide to wrap my arms around you right now. But that's domination. Kitchener over Guelph this season. I know with Guelph hosting the Memorial Cup next year, that it's likely to be changed, that domination will be reversed. But for now, the Rangers take 7 of 8 from the Storm. And a shout out to my buddy Gary Botter over there in Guelph. What a stone cold beauty he is. It makes the trip to Guelph worthwhile. Always like seeing Gary, his son Blake, and the entire crew over there at what I used to call the Guelph Sports and Entertainment Center. That's how long ago I used to work for OHL coverage with Rogers TV in Guelph. It's the Sleeman Center now, of course, and it's always fun to see Gary, even though he gives me the hardest of hard times. So I think all of this just sets up. I mean, if you're not already anticipating tomorrow night's game at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, check your pulse. The Rangers face the Flint Firebirds. Kitchener needs a point. They need to get to extra time. I would prefer they just win in regulation time, but whatever. Rangers, you do you. 1 point away are the Kitchener Rangers from clinching first place in the Western Conference this season and holding home ice advantage as long as they are in the playoffs. And wouldn't you know, the next closest team to Kitchener in those standings, the Flint Firebirds. That's who's here tomorrow night. It could not set up any better for a massive Tuesday night game at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. If you can't be there, don't worry about it. We got you covered. This is your home of Kitchener Rangers hockey, and Josh Piercy and I will get everything started tomorrow night with your pregame show at 6:30. But it's going to be a massive, massive game at the Memorial Auditorium as this regular season winds down.
1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love you.
I love you, Guelph, especially you, Botter. Let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Number 1, a large enough crowd gathered in the University District in Waterloo on Saturday to prompt a public warning from police to avoid the area. But the crowd paled in comparison to recent years. Was it the bad weather or was it the sniper? Regional police say the officer on a balcony with the high-powered rifle was, quote, in accordance with legislated standards for emergency response and public order deployment. Number 2, warm this morning, cold this afternoon with flurries on the way. And did that weekend snow take us to a new snowfall record? Well, I'm still trying to confirm all of the weekend's totals and what it means for our season totals. But what I know for sure is that the snowfall record for Waterloo region came back in 2007, 2008, when we had 251.4 centimeters through the winter. I'll try to work on the numbers that we've had so far this winter because we got more. I'd say we were pushing 10 centimeters over the weekend. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, more than 100 more municipal employees in Guelph have joined the Sunshine List, earning more than $100,000. Almost 700 of Guelph's 2,500 plus employees cracked the Sunshine List last year, an increase of more than 18%. The annual report also shows more employees earning more than $200,000 annually, including Guelph's CAO, Tara Baker, who topped the list with $275,721 in pay and almost $12,000 in taxable benefits. Number 4, protests have been organized province-wide today over concerns Ontario's healthcare is being privatized. The nationwide Day of Action is organized by the Ontario Health Coalition and will include a rally today outside the office of Waterloo MP Bardish Chagger. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, I hope you were able to hear a couple of weeks ago our dear friends with Oma's Siskona of Kitchener-Waterloo, grandmas who raise money. That's basically what it comes down to. And bless their hearts, they were holding an online auction and they have checked back in because we were able to have them on the show to promote it a little bit. And they were able to raise almost $3,000 through that online auction to support the Stephen Lewis Foundation. So way to go, you fundraising grandmas.
You go to the box, you feel shame.
And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning, the 16th of March. So I'm curious. I'm curious as to your reactions from the weekend's activities in Waterloo. Pretty tame by comparison when it comes to the gathering on the streets in the University District, although I will remind you that tomorrow is actually St. Paddy's Day. And I don't think anybody is lowering their guard when it comes to patrolling the area and keeping an eye on things. We're just not sure what might happen tomorrow. The weekend, obviously, Saturday, we had all of that snow coming in through Friday night into Saturday. Not the best weather. So there's that aspect of things. And there was enough of a crowd, as I mentioned in the Farwell Show 5. There was enough of a crowd to have police put out a warning in the afternoon to the rest of us, Joe and Jane residents of the region, to stay away from one of the neighborhoods in the University District due to the high volume of individuals on the roads. And then there were the social media posts that gained some level of virality when we saw with our own eyes a police sniper on a balcony looking over things. And so I ask you this, I just want to know, how do you feel about this? My first thought was, well, that makes some sense because you use that scope and you get a better view of things down below. But then I realized, well, wait a minute, you dum-dum. We have binoculars for things like that. So you can watch from above and radio to below without the need for the rifle. So binoculars would work. Drones would work. Listen, I am, and I think I have a record of this. I'm one of the biggest supporters of our police service. I think the women and men in uniform are doing jobs that none of us would want, and we should not be as quick to criticize as we are. It is not an easy job to do. I just can't understand, and I maybe you have a better sense than I do. Who are you going to shoot? Like what? This is the part that I'm having a hard time with. Again, binoculars, drones. I totally understand patrolling from above to have a better view of what's going on down below. But who's the sniper going to shoot at? This is what I'm unsure of. And then further to that, based on what we have heard from police after these photos and videos started circulating, this is in accordance with legislated standards for emergency response and public order deployment. So I'm not sure who or what it is we're going to shoot into a crowd, no matter how talented or how skilled the sniper is. I'm not sure about that. But the other part is, if this is what we need for emergency response these days, I'm not sure. I know I am uncomfortable with that. I don't like that. This is the world we live in, where we need snipers on balconies to oversee a party on the streets of Waterloo. If this is where we are at, I'm out, baby. I'm out. I'm sorry. So would love your thoughts. Maybe you know more about these tactical responses or have different thoughts on that. Or maybe you're like, yeah, cool. This is what we need to do these days, and I'm A-okay with it because I sure as heck am not. Take your calls after this. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I am not sure who the sniper was going to shoot. Actually, I don't think the sniper intended or ever had any idea of shooting anyone. But he was there in a balcony overlooking the Waterloo Street Party. I don't know how I feel about that. And more so, I'm not sure how I feel if this is what we need to do in order to protect public safety when big events are happening. Like what's next? The KW Oktoberfest parade? Oktoberfest itself? Is this the world we're living in? Because if that's the world we're living in, please stop it. I want to get off the ride. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. George, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. I'd like to answer that question you just put out.
Please do.
But before I do the Blackhawks' future look bright or what? What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think you got Nick Lardis, the leading scorer from last year, and Merrick Van Acker and Jack Pridham, the two leading scorers this year.
I think there might be something going on here, Mike. Is it very possible there's something we don't know of that the police service do know about, like some possible terrorist sleeper cells or whatever it is that they're on the lookout for that could cause some major damage?
Yeah, George, I appreciate that call, and believe you me, the thought crossed my mind, and I guess you wouldn't tip your hand about that ahead of time. But again, I say if that's the case, holy moly. And I will also add to this, I mean, we've got a history here with this party, and there has never been even a sniff of something terrorist-related connected to it. So that would be new then. Either way, what an odd sight to be dealing with. Mary, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Hey, Mike, I bought the tickets.
Which tickets?
50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was about 8:45, and I sat by the phone on Saturday morning, and the darn thing didn't ring.
I should have given a nod to Rangers Reach and the executive director there, Craig Campbell, a $149,000 50-50 jackpot on Friday night. Huge stuff.
Well, my phone, well, it rang about 9:24, and I was getting a little, ooh.
I get you. So listen, Mary, I love you like, you know, like nobody's business, but we got lots of phone calls, so we'll get to you. That's all you wanted to say? That's all you wanted to say? Okay. Mary, I love you. There's a sniper in Waterloo, but Mary's just concerned about her 50-50 ticket. And that's okay. You could, like, that's all right. Mike, good morning.
Mike, my first reaction to this was there a threat to there? Did they have intelligence on this? I, like you, want the party stopped. I believe you'll never be able to stop it. They've been talking about it for 20 years. But if you're bringing out snipers now as a matter of best practice or common practice, I have a problem with that. Because, well, who are you going to shoot, like you asked that question? But if they brought out tear gas or flashbangs to disrupt the crowd, I'm all in for it. That's my thoughts, Mike. All
right, Mike, appreciate the call. I'm just going to say again, if you want to stop the party, you change reading week. And I'm sorry, but I'm unwilling to accept, because I'm stubborn and rigid and a whole bunch of other things. I'm unwilling to accept the challenge that poses to the academic institutions. I know it's not convenient that reading week would be moved to a time in mid-March so close to exams and the end of the term. Well, too bad. Because if you insist on partying in and around March 17th, and we don't want the party, and everybody says they don't want it, well, then that's what you do. You change reading week and you deal with the consequences because you refuse to stop partying. If you change reading week, nobody's going to be around to have the party. And if you refuse to make that administrative change to the academic calendar, then what I believe is you really don't mind the party at all, which is fine with me then. It's fine. We'll continue to invest the money to keep the attendees to the party safe, and life goes on. But stop misleading people then that you actually want the party stopped, because I'm sorry, I don't believe that anymore. If you want the party stopped, you change reading week. That's it. It's over the second you make that change. I promise. Al is with us on the phone this morning. We're talking about that sniper in Waterloo. Al, what do you think?
We sure are, Mike. I'm a little disappointed that you wouldn't get the police chief on this morning.
I'm working on it. We got a statement from the police. We're working on the chief for tomorrow morning.
And my thoughts, be prepared. I don't know, maybe you don't have time to listen to the news, Mike, but all kinds of stuff going on around the world, and one way to be prepared. That's all I can say. He has to do. They have to do that.
Okay, so you're accepting this
in today's world, Mike. You never know.
So you are accepting this as just that's what happens nowadays. We have a large gathering, and we need it patrolled by snipers.
One sniper, Mike.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I do.
Okay, and that's totally fair. And as I said before, I'm not okay with that. If this is, I'm not blaming the people then who are charged with offering that level of protection. I'm just not cool with what that tells us about the world we're living in. And I might want to go find a different hole to crawl into, because I'm not at all comfortable with what that tells us about the world today. Shane, Farwell's Force, member number 228. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I first owe you an apology, and if you wish to revoke my Farwell Force membership, I totally understand. I wasn't able to listen to you very much last week. Didn't live up to my end of the bargain. But I did, however, listen to you at the hockey game. So I hope that my hour of listening to that makes up for the 3 days that I wasn't able to listen to you. So I got a 15-minute extra in there. And, if I don't get a chance to listen to you again later in the week, then maybe that's a gimme.
You are a member in good standing, Shane. I appreciate it.
So it is unfortunate, Mike, that we do live in this society where we have to have a sniper overlooking a large gathering, whether it's 10,000, 20,000 people down there. I don't know what the tally is right now. We may never know. I feel bad for the police chief being called into the principal's office, though, having to explain to the mayor of Waterloo why they did what they did, but they are here to serve and protect. Having said that, I agree with you. I wish I could crawl into a bigger hole. I just had 2 grandbabies delivered to me a month ago, and it is unfortunate that they are going to have to grow up in this society. Having said that, what happened in downtown Waterloo at the exact same time that this was going on, we had a man walking around with a knife threatening people, damaging ambulances, et cetera, et cetera. Had he gotten into that crowd, what would have happened? Yeah, they're there for safety. They're doing their job. Do I agree with it? I'm on the fence.
All right, Shane, appreciate that call. And listen, I hear where you're coming from when you talk about the other activity that required intervention in and around the same time. My question just becomes, if that person with the knife is in a crowd of students, again, no matter how skilled the sniper is, are you really discharging your firearm into that crowd? I can't fathom what would have had to be the situation that required the use of the sniper's rifle. That's just my thought on that. John, I got about 30 seconds left. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Farwell number 325, Durham John.
Attaboy. Durham John, what's on your mind? What do you say about the sniper in Waterloo?
I agree 100% with you, Mike. 100%.
So you're not comfortable if this is the world that we're living in?
Not comfortable at all.
All right, Durham John comes in with a quick agreement. I'm not asking necessarily for that. I was just really curious upon or under which circumstances does that sniper fire into a crowd of students? And is this really the world that we're living in? It may be. Immediately now, I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center for an update, and then let's talk about the pipeline. A regional councillor said that dirty word at a council meeting last week. We're going to find out more about why he brought the word up, coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
This is where today's topics turn into today's talking points. It's local and it's Democratic radio at its finest. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
Looking at the capacity issues that we have, and even into 2028, when we start to bring on more capacity within our infrastructure, it seems we're still not going to have enough water, because I know that once we start to develop and grow, there's going to be still more demand at that point. I'm going to throw it out there. Have we considered the feasibility of having a pipeline?
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio.
That is Regional Councillor for Kitchener, Joe Gowing, at a meeting of Regional Council last week. And the way in which Councillor Gowing phrased that question caught my attention. I'm going to throw it out there. Have we considered a pipeline? Because I'm old enough to remember a time when such a word, pipeline, was a very naughty word indeed to use around regional council chambers. Councillor Gowing joins us on the show to talk more about it this morning. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
I'm sure you recognized the gravity of not only the situation we're facing with our water, but the idea that you decided to bring up in a public council meeting. We didn't talk about, well, pipelines would get mentioned decades ago, but just, don't talk about that because we've got this great system and we're going to manage it and maintain it and everything's going to be fine without a pipeline. How much did you weigh that into your raising of the idea at council last week?
I would not be doing my job if I didn't look at every avenue. That's the reason I brought it forward, because I didn't hear or see that proposal in the public realm. So I, again, just threw it out there to say, have we been looking at this? Because we have to look at every avenue. I'm not saying I want it, but I want to know if we have even looked if it's feasible.
And one of the challenges that is presented then, at least from where I'm sitting, Joe, is let's just say, yes, it is feasible, which I'm actually almost certain it is, but you can't build a pipeline overnight. So we really have to start thinking about these things today, don't we?
Yeah, and that's why I brought it out last week, because one of the look at the ION, for instance. When we started talking about the ION, we started a fund to start putting money away to be able to prepare for that. So it wasn't a huge bill in our hands at that point. And it's no different in my day job in investments. When somebody comes to me and says, I want to purchase a home in X amount of years, well, then let's start now putting money away.
So what have you learned since you brought this up at council last week?
Well, I learned that I shocked a lot of people for bringing it up, but it's necessary to talk about. I know that staff is going to be looking into it, part of our water supply strategy, so that I was happy to hear that everything is going to be on the table when they do that. I just want to make sure that if that's the way we're going to go, that we're ready and not waiting 15 years, as mentioned in that interview that I had with one of the commissioners, Commissioner Getsky, is he said we're good for 15 years. Okay, what happens after that? I'm not one person to live in the 2, 3, 5 year. I want to know long term, are we going to be in this situation again?
What kind of response did you get after you brought up the idea of a pipeline?
Thanks, actually. There was a lot of people that reached out to me and said, I'm glad that someone is thinking outside the box of our current realm, thinking about the future of what our water is going to look like, how much water we're going to have, because we have to think of all avenues. And if we're not, again, like I said, we're not doing our job if we're not thinking of everything. So I'm getting a lot of feedback from the public. There is people that are totally against it. But again, I'm not saying I want it, but we really need to look at what does that look like. And if that's the 100% solution that we need, then we should be looking into it a little more.
Well, and frankly, Joe, if we're good for 15 years, according to Commissioner Getsky at the meeting last week, and you're asking the question, which I think is absolutely the question to ask, what happens next? Don't we almost have to start work on a pipeline immediately or very soon? Because, again, you can't build one overnight. If we're good for 15 years, can we have a pipeline ready in 15 years if we start tomorrow?
Well, from what one of the staff said at that meeting, it's an aggressive 20 years to build a pipeline. So they've asked me to hold off while they do their study on the water supply strategy. I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to continue to ask the question on what we're doing with it, what's the feasibility, where we're at with it. Because it's essential that we have all the information ready. And I'm positive staff are going to come back with a bunch of recommendations, including the potential of a pipeline to Lake Erie. But you're right. If we don't start looking at it now, and this is what I said at the council meeting, if we're good for 15 years and we wait the 15 years and then all of a sudden, hey, we're in a mess again, then with an additional 20 years after that before we even think of getting a pipeline.
How confident are you that we are going to be able to work our way out of this water issue we're currently dealing with?
I have full faith in our staff that they're on the right track. I know that at the end of this month, one of our treatment plants is going to be back online. In the fall, the other treatment plant is going to be back online. We have measures to have a side stream at the Mannheim plant so that we can divert from the plant so we can take it offline and do the repairs there. So they know the infrastructure work that's being done. At the same time, as I've mentioned before, there is that capacity. Where are we going to get our water? What do our aquifers look like? And I know our hydrogeologist is really having his finger on the pulse with that. So I'm very confident that in the short term we're going to get out of this crisis, this issue that we have. But we need to start looking at long-term solutions as well.
What did you make of Councillor Craig's motion to have a third-party investigation to determine the when and the why this all happened?
I'm in favor of it. You always need to know, how did we get here? Because if you don't know where you came from, how do you know where you're going? So I really am looking forward to that starting up to find out what happened. I know there's been some talk that the province calculation is for surface water and not so much for groundwater. So there's been talk of using the wrong calculations on that sense. We have come up in the short term of what we should be calculating with, and we have given that to the provincial government so that they can update their system. And again, like I said, our staff are on this, but I really need to know and understand, how did we get here?
Joe, I appreciate your outside-the-box thinking and your time on the show this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Anytime, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
I look forward to it. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Joe Gowing is a regional councillor who represents Kitchener. I actually received an email from a listener last week when I played audio from the council meeting, and that was exactly the language that I think it was Phil who sent the email, but used. This is outside the box thinking that we need more of. Councillor Gowing is asking the right questions. Look, this is, I'm having a hard time here because as somebody who grew up in this community and who got to know a whole lot about our existing groundwater system when I was the honorary chair of our Children's Groundwater Festival. I'm still not quite sure how that happened, but it was a great learning experience because we rely on groundwater for about 80%, probably a little less than that now, probably closer to 75, but nonetheless, of our community's needs coming from these underground aquifers and this incredibly intricate underground system. And it makes us unique. And I remember as I began to learn more about that groundwater system all those many years ago, this goes back a couple of decades now, but every once in a while, somebody would kind of scoff at the idea. Oh, yeah, some people think we need a pipeline. We don't need a pipeline. Look at this system we've got here. It's the envy of the world. And that was it. The idea of a pipeline was dismissed so quickly. And now here we are. And somebody screwed something up pretty bad to get us to this point. There was a pretty interesting exploration of this in a weekend read in my Waterloo Region Record that pointed to the miscalculations made when our population grew incredibly quickly. Now, a lot of that population growth, which came, of course, from international students, has since evaporated. But the strain on the water supply was real, is real, and we're dealing with it today. So here I am, a lifer in this community who has learned about our groundwater system and how awesome it is and how nobody even with any degree of seriousness utters the word pipeline, to the point that we are here today. And Joe's comment about being good for 15 years, that's what we're hearing from staff at the region. Yep, we're going to be good for 15 years. Okay, but then what? Because we don't want to be 15 years from now, because God willing, I'm still here to be a part of it. Well, then what? In 15 years, are we in this same situation? And if you listened in on that meeting last week of Regional Council, the timeline for a pipeline is 15 to 20 years. So for me, why wouldn't you start tomorrow, put a shovel in the ground? And I'll remind you, and this is where I start getting really concerned about leadership in this community. And I don't mean any disrespect, but if your job is to lead, then why aren't you leading? And the connection I will make, or the comparison I will use, is to our arena, which, you know, I love the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. I love it. I hope it's there forever for me to walk into and talk to the ghosts of hockey past in there. But when that arena was expanded, the last big renovation was done and the additional seats were added back in 2012. The conversation to do that expansion started in 2010. And at that time, I was at the meetings. I remember, I'm not a turnip. At that time, we said, as a community, as a council in Kitchener, this will buy us the 10 to 15 years we need to have the new arena ready. Well, it's 10 to 15 years later. Where's the new arena? Nobody's even talked. Well, I'm talking about it because I kind of got to be in my bonnet about it. But where's the arena? Where's the capital forecast that shows the plan, the actual, not just words on a piece of paper? Where's the plan? Where's the money that was saved? Where's all of these things? So if we can't do that for an arena and entertainment facility, how do you expect me to believe that we're going to do the necessary planning and preparation for a pipeline? Do you know how many different fingers are going to go in the pipeline pie? It's not just going to be the region of Waterloo. It'll be other surrounding municipalities. It's going to need support and financing from the provincial government. We would be lucky if we actually began to seriously entertain this conversation today. We would be lucky to untangle all of the bureaucratic mess in 2 years before we could put a shovel in the ground. And I think that's optimistic. So what are we doing? If we've got 15 years left of sustainability when it comes to water, and we're not starting to build a pipeline tomorrow, what's happening in 15 years? And what faith do you have that anybody is minding this house? I appreciate Councillor Gowing for asking the question. My apologies, truly, for the utter lack of faith I have right now in leadership. I am not in a good place as far as this is concerned, because we shouldn't be in this place today. I'll go to the phones. George from Cambridge is with us. Good morning, George.
Yeah, Mike. Hi, good morning. Mike, it's like going to the dentist or going to physio. We don't want to go. We don't want to do it. But you know what? You have to do it. I hope the leadership in this region know that, be a visionary, and start planning for that 15 to 20 years from now when we're going to need that water.
Yeah, George, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad Councillor Gowing brought it up. Let's see where it moves, if it moves, at the regional level, because I for one, am seriously lacking in the faith department that we have the ability to do this big, grand thing, because we got to get going quick. I don't know how your level of faith is, but I'm happy to hear from you on the show. It's the Mike Farwell Show. Phone lines always open. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I'm positive staff are going to come back with a bunch of recommendations, including the potential of a pipeline to Lake Erie. If we don't start looking at it now, and this is what I said at the council meeting, if we're good for 15 years and we wait the 15 years and then all of a sudden, hey, we're in a mess again, then with an additional 20 years after that before we even think of getting a pipeline.
Joe Gowing is a regional councillor who represents Kitchener. He raised the idea of a pipeline at last week's regional council meeting, and I found it interesting the way that Councillor Gowing brought the issue forward, because he just said, I'm going to throw it out there. And I think that's with an understanding of, historically, we don't talk about pipelines in these here parts. And listen, I also recognize, and it's been brought up as we've talked about this water issue on the show, Lake Erie is the shallowest of our Great Lakes. And once you start down this road, not only is there no turning back, but it's not a forever kind of solution, right? We're not going to be the only community tapping in. And we talked about this on the show last week with the Nanticoke water station, where all of the infrastructure, or much of the infrastructure to connect to Lake Erie, is already in place. But we're talking, 80 kilometers of pipeline as the crow flies to get built, and all of the communities in between here and there that will also be tapping in, to say nothing, of course, of our friends on the other side of the lake, the other side of the border, who may also want access to this water. The idea of a pipeline makes it sound, at least to me, like this is an infinite resource, and it's not. Obviously, if we were to begin very soon on a pipeline project that would take upwards of 20 years and many billions, that's with a B, of course, many billions of dollars, it would absolutely serve our needs for our lifetimes. Our children's lifetimes, our grandchildren's lifetimes. I suppose that remains to be seen. But it is not water, an infinite resource. And I can't help but think of this in the context of what's happening up in Owen Sound right now. Our friends up there, we're traveling there on the weekend to finish off the Kitchener Rangers season. Saturday night, the final game of the season is against the Attack up in Owen Sound. They've got a boil water advisory right now in Owen Sound. Like, what happens when we arrive at a situation like that, where, much like Calgary, they say 3-minute showers, or like Owen Sound, they're saying boil your water? It's such an interesting time to be existing in all of this. Rick is with us on the phone. Good morning, Rick.
Hey, good morning, Mike. I've been listening to this water stuff going on for a little bit now, and I got to tell you, being someone that grew up in the area, when we had an opportunity to follow a pipeline route to Georgian Bay on the decommissioned railway lines, if I recall, when they were all taken out. And when someone came up with the idea to pull the water out of the Grand River, again, having grown up here and having this Grand River turn into a cesspool, like during some summers when it was really hot and dry, I thought, my goodness, what short-term thinking. Too bad we didn't have the leadership back then that we had when we put the expressway in, again, when I was a kid.
Yeah, you know what, Rick? That's an excellent point. And I'll come back to my concerns, truly, with leadership of late. There seems to be a great deal of complacency, not a lot in the way of vision. And I don't know how much forward looking we're doing other than to earn our seat, return to that seat in the next election. The expressway is a great example of something that was visionary. The pipeline, it feels to me like we're already too late. We best get started. And that pains me because, of course, we've been so proud for so long of our existing groundwater system. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I think I've been pretty clear about what I hope will happen on the site of the former bus terminal on Charles Street in downtown Kitchener. I mean, I may not have the entirety of the vision put together, but I think there is great opportunity here for the community to really revitalize the downtown in the core of its largest municipality. Obviously, when a parcel of land like this is declared surplus, lots of people will have thoughts on it, and some of those thoughts are decidedly different than my own, and that's the kind of thought we're going to get from Brian Doucette, who's an associate professor in the School of Planning at the University of Waterloo. Brian argues in a recent op-ed that we should not be selling the former bus terminal for a quick buck. Instead, we should be using it for affordable housing. So, Brian, as you joined the show this morning, why don't we start right there with your argument? Why should the bus terminal be used for affordable housing?
Well, I mean, let's be clear. We have a huge crisis of affordable housing. And let's talk through the argument that typically happens around surplus public land. That land is declared surplus, and then it's sold on the open market to the highest bidder. So the Region of Waterloo would get some money, and there'd be a development that would look very similar to other kinds of developments on private land. But the region and all levels of government here are committed to dealing with the affordable housing issue. So while the regional government or local government might get a little bit of extra money, that money then has to be used, if they want to address the housing crisis, it has to be used towards affordable housing. So what do? Well, you have to then find either another site that you own, but if your whole premise is we don't want to keep these surplus sites, we want to sell them, then maybe you have to go and actually acquire another site, and you pay the market price for it with that money that you got for selling the land that was already owned. Like, if we're serious about dealing with the housing crisis, dealing with this affordability crisis, and we have public land that is no longer needed for one purpose, the best strategy is to use that land to build the kind of housing the market is unwilling or unable to build, and to actually tackle the problem head on and build stuff either ourselves or in partnership with nonprofits.
What happened, Brian, in nearby Hamilton when they got this equation wrong, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this is going back a few years, and it wasn't city-owned land. It was land that was owned by a school. Often, schools are made surplus. They close, demographics change and whatnot. And through the Ontario Realty Directive, when a piece of land like that is declared surplus, other public entities have the option to buy it for the appraised price of that site. So in Hamilton, this school was appraised at about $5 million, just under $5 million. Now, for a variety of reasons, the city of Hamilton passed on the opportunity to acquire it for that price. So nobody else wants it in the public sector, so then it's sold on the open market. And there were two bids that came in. A bid from Indwell, which is a nonprofit housing provider, also active in this region. They are one of the best nonprofit housing groups in the country, I would argue. So they put in a bid for the appraised price of about just under $5 million. The other bid was from a private developer who paid $15 million for that site. So obviously the nonprofits can't compete. So that land was sold. The school board gets a bit of a windfall. But while Hamilton is eventually, although now with the market conditions, that project's on hold, eventually there will be more market-based housing there. But they're not going to get anything fundamentally different. And it begs the question, the housing supply that the private sector is building isn't the kind of affordable housing that we need. So it makes you wonder, well, if we do more of the same, why should we expect different outcomes, right? And really what we need to do is have local governments work with nonprofits like Indwell, like Union Co-op here in Waterloo region, and really keep that land in public ownership and build a whole host of different things that would really tackle the housing crisis head on.
So we're working here from the premise that there is a crisis in housing, specifically in this instance, affordable housing. And I do not disagree with that premise one bit. We have talked about it an awful lot over many years now on the show, this crisis that we are in the midst of. But when we do talk about it, it's often acknowledged that this is not the fault of or responsibility of merely the municipal government. The province, the feds have to play a role in this overall. So why, Brian, should the municipal government take responsibility like this in our region?
That's a very good question. And I think because we have a provincial government that isn't funding affordable and non-market housing in the way that they could, and they aren't developing tenant protections in the way that they should, which means a lot of people are falling into homelessness because of things like loopholes in rent control and rent evictions and so on. I think that places an extra onus on the levels of government that actually want to meaningfully tackle this issue. So the federal government, through things like the Housing Accelerator Fund, has provided funding for municipalities who are keen to be part of the solution. Kitchener is one of those. Kitchener recently got some Housing Accelerator funding from the federal government to acquire some land downtown to build a new fire station and affordable housing project, like a really cool, innovative way to actually acquire more land, bring it into public ownership, and build a really exciting project. So I think municipalities, even though they have the fewest resources, have to do what they can. And some of that actually comes to this idea of doing things with the land that they already have. And one option is to start a municipal housing corporation or regional housing corporation and build stuff yourself. I think that's a very good approach. I think every community in the country should have something like that. Another approach, though, would simply be to say, hey, we have this site, and speak to the nonprofits, the non-market housing players in the community, many of whom, as the Hamilton example illustrated, are priced out of acquiring land when it goes to market, when they're competing against private developers. So a site like the bus terminal, go to the union co-ops of our community, the indwells of our community, and say, okay, if we could lease this land to you for a nominal fee, what could you do? Think big, think ambitious, think all kinds of creative, affordable and non-market housing, which isn't just, supportive housing, rent geared to income. A whole host of things become possible. And what you'll hear when you speak to those nonprofits is, hey, actually, when we don't have to factor in land and we're not competing against private developers, all of a sudden, our math pencils out much better. We can do a lot. We can actually deliver a kind of housing supply that the market's not doing. I think then you're getting closer to some meaningful housing supply that directly tackles the affordability crisis.
You mentioned, Brian, that municipalities across the country could be looking at this idea of a municipal housing authority. Are there any examples in existence today?
There's a great one in Whistler, out in British Columbia, the Whistler Housing Authority. They've been operating for a couple of decades now, and they are an independent, self-sufficient authority that's owned by what they call the Resorts Municipality of Whistler, to use their full name. But they're independent, and they develop, manage, and finance both affordable rental and home ownership. So they use public land. And I guarantee you, in Whistler, because the WHA is so popular, so successful, I guarantee you, if any piece of public land is declared surplus, there would be a huge public outcry if that was sold on the open market to a private developer, because that's exactly the kind of site that the WHA uses to grow its supply, its stock of non-market housing. So rentals is very simple. You pay 30% of your income, the standard definition of affordable housing. But they also have units that you can buy and sell. Now, all the buying and selling goes through the Whistler Housing Authority, so there's no real estate commissions or no nothing. And the buying and selling price is actually linked to inflation, not to the market. So you can buy a WHA home, a condo, for about $250,000. Now, when you sell it for $250,000 plus inflation, right? So you're not going to get rich, but you're going to have a place to live in one of the most expensive communities in the country, where people literally commute over mountain ranges to get into Whistler because it's so expensive unless you're in this non-market housing. Imagine if we had something like that here, where you actually had a robust system of housing that catered to a whole range of incomes. So it was actually competing against the private developers, keeping them in check a little bit, saying, hey, we have this other kind of supply that people are interested in. I think then you're closer to having a housing system overall that's going to be working for people and provide a range of options that, quite frankly, we don't have in our community.
I love the point about people commuting over mountains to get to Whistler, because we see that here. People live in outlying areas and drive into this region for work because this is where the work is, but the housing that we have available is not affordable for the work that they have. So I get this. And the thing about Whistler, too, of course, is it's Whistler, right? I mean, it's a destination already unto itself. So here's a way I've been thinking about this recently, Brian, and I'd love to throw it past you, a bit of a different take on this, because, look, I've grown up in this town, and I agree that we're in this housing crisis and this affordability crisis, and we not only need more housing generally, but we need more affordable housing. But I think that we better be careful to not just focus on fixing problems or building housing, because we're not going to have anywhere for people to go when they do get here, other than perhaps to work. Like, I'm thinking public land like this in a downtown core could be something pretty spectacular, with entertainment centers, convention centers, all kinds of different things like that. And maybe the housing projects, the likes of which you and I are talking about, could be elsewhere. Because I worry that a city gets a little boring if we don't have those amenities. Is it fair to think about that right now? Like this idea, but not on this piece of land.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar as to the state of the odd as you are, Mike. So I don't know if that is something that is an urgent need of replacement. But you can develop really cool places, really interesting places with lots of interesting amenities that have housing on top. Right? We're not talking about single-story houses, nor should we only be talking about buildings that are exclusively housing. So if we have a need for more community centers, if we have a need for more kind of public space, more amenity space, especially the kind of stuff that might not be able to pay the high rents that the private sector demands for that ground floor retail, like, I think this is a real city building potential to think about, okay, are there different functions that could happen in this site that maybe the market's not catering to? And on top of that, you put in your housing and you find non-market players, non-profit players to get involved. So the idea of a mixed use site, I think, is far better for a downtown location than, solely residential. And let's also be clear around the housing front. Like, as someone who studies housing for a living and studies affordable housing, like, I want to be perfectly clear. If we want a good supply of genuinely affordable housing that people on low, moderate, middle incomes can afford, the only sites where you're going to get that delivered at scale are publicly owned sites. That's the reality. The inclusionary zoning, the little crumbs of stuff that you get on some private developments, it's not nothing, but it's really a drop in the bucket. We want to do things substantially different. We want to make sure this is a community that people from all income brackets can live. We need to use that public land strategically. And so selling that land, like, I want that to be so taboo that it is in communities like Whistler. Like, no serious politician would propose to sell off public land in Whistler when they could be doing something substantially different. And I want that to be the case here. Otherwise, we're going to be in a situation where, as you say, people are going to have to commute further and further to get into the jobs that we have here. We're going to see young people priced out of Waterloo region, out of areas that they need to live. Like, the market is good at doing some kinds of housing. It's not good at building the kind of affordable housing that we need. And public land is the key piece of that whole puzzle.
Always a good conversation, Brian, and I appreciate you making time for another one on the show. Thanks very much for being here.
My pleasure, Mike. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Brian Doucette is an associate professor in the School of Planning at the University of Waterloo. Don't sell that former bus terminal on Charles Street for a quick buck. Use it for affordable housing. I'm open to the idea of using public land to provide this necessary component of our housing. I would suggest that maybe not this public land. And I could come up with all kinds of great ideas around using this public land for big, beautiful, exciting things and then transferring other public land to be used for affordable housing. Anyway, always happy to hear other points of view on the show. That's what it's all about. I want convention center, arena, concert facility in the downtown, and we can find other public land for affordable housing. But Brian Doucette, who studies this stuff at the University of Waterloo, says this is a terrific example of what can be done, and we shouldn't just let the land go to the highest bidder. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Once a day, whether you need it or not, we take time on this show. Make the space to remind you that not everybody is a jackwagon. We spend time on this show, considerable time, talking about jackwagons specifically and general jackwagonry behavior. But every day around 10:20, I like to take a moment to remind you that not everybody is a jackwagon. And so this morning, I remind you of the Washington State man who found himself buried in an avalanche for 4 hours. But it was his connection to his wife that saved him. Michael Harris is an experienced skier, had been on the same mountain countless times, but this time the snow gave out beneath him and an avalanche was triggered. He ended up in a snow hole and got trapped, but he did have his cell phone zipped into a breast pocket of his jacket.
Signed, sealed, and delivered right here. So my wife was calling me, and when I was buried, I heard someone, I felt someone calling me, because I felt it vibrate, and I could hear it ring, and yet my hand couldn't get to it. I'm a religious guy, and so I started praying to a higher power, right? And I said, God, I'm in trouble. I don't know if anyone's going to know where I'm at, but I can't get out of this on my own.
It was indeed Michael's wife, Penny, who had been calling, and she knew something was wrong.
You get a feeling that something's just not right. I followed my intuition. I saw his location and checked it a couple times. It wasn't moving.
After realizing her husband's phone had been in the exact same spot for hours, Penny contacted Ski Patrol and began driving towards the mountain herself. When she arrived, rescuers used the phone's location to pinpoint exactly where Penny's husband, Michael, was buried. And despite being buried for more than 4 hours, he had an air pocket roughly the size of a beach ball in front of his face. Maybe a bit of a miracle, just enough space to keep breathing. And thanks to the precise location from his phone, Ski Patrol was able to dig him out. Spent a few days in hospital recovering, but all is well. Michael and Penny are back home and continuing their marital bliss. You know, we started several years ago in the Farwell household sharing locations on our phones. And I had heard somebody else talking at one point about how weird that might be. Not to check up on things, here's a great example of why you might share your location with your partner, just in case you trigger an avalanche and get stuck in a snow hole on a mountain in Washington State. Your daily reminder that not everybody is a jackwagon. Hey, if you know somebody who is not a jackwagon, we are always interested in hearing your stories. The local non-jackwagons are our favorite non-jackwagons, and we know there are lots of great people in this community. Drop me an email anytime and point me towards the story. It's mike@570news.com. But every day on the show at 10:20, we'll issue that reminder to you. There's good things happening out there, and not every person that you encounter or share this world with is a jackwagon. All right, we're fast approaching your 10:30 update in the 570 News Center. It is Monday, of course. That means a couple of things. Just over 30 minutes from now, it is your weekly look at this week in music history with musicologist Brian Allison, followed at 11:30 by David Drewe, who will be here with Drewe's Views. But right after this update from the 570 News Center, celebrating entrepreneurs in our community at an upcoming Hall of Fame event. We'll tell you all about it next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Waterloo Region's Entrepreneur Hall of Fame is about to get some new members. It's an annual event that recognizes leadership, vision, and integrity in our local business community and the entrepreneurial space. And this is all a part of the work that's done in our community by JA Southwestern Ontario. Karen Gallant is the president and CEO there and joins me in studio to talk more about it. Karen, it's great to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Tell us a little more about JA Southwestern Ontario.
So JA Southwestern Ontario has been in operation since 1963, and we teach young people all about financial health, work readiness, and entrepreneurship so that we can really help them get themselves set up for success in their future lives. And entrepreneurship is a big piece of the work that we do, and it aligns so well with the Waterloo Region Entrepreneur Hall of Fame.
It certainly does. And, you know, you go back all those decades, you say to 1963, I'm sure that work has evolved over the years as well. But I remember when I was in high school and friends that were going to JA meetings, participating in events, etc. And really, it's getting to those young people earlier and building that next generation of entrepreneurs in our community.
It is, absolutely. We really want to try to inspire young people to think about entrepreneurship as a viable career option. They get exposed to lots of different careers throughout the course of their life, through their parents, through their teachers, and so on. But if they don't have a business leader or an entrepreneur to look up to and to really act as a mentor, then they might not consider that. And of course, we know small businesses are the backbone of our community and of the Canadian economy. So we need to make sure we're doing our part to generate that next generation of business leaders and entrepreneurs. So it's a great program.
Yeah, and I remember from this Hall of Fame event last year, it's so inspiring, these stories from the young people who have been so involved with JA Southwestern Ontario. It must energize you and the team too.
It does. It absolutely, you hear a lot of negative stories about young people, and then you meet some of the students who go through our company program or some of those that we meet in the classrooms, and you just remember our youth are our future, and the future is very bright. These are really ambitious and energetic young people, and they're just trying to find their way and figure out what's right for them. And a role model can make a big difference. And so we're really lucky. We have lots of volunteer mentors who take on that role for them and become a very influential individual in their lives.
So we're 6-7 weeks out now from the Hall of Fame event at Binghamans on May the 5th. Yep. Tell us more about the Waterloo Region Entrepreneur Hall of Fame.
So the Waterloo Region Entrepreneur Hall of Fame has been around for quite some time, and it's really been a celebration of entrepreneurial excellence in our community, a celebration of entrepreneurship as well as innovation. And we've honored many of the stalwart businesses in Waterloo Region over the years. And it's an evening of celebration. We have a wonderful networking reception and then a lovely dinner and then the celebration and induction ceremony itself. And it's just a great opportunity to mix and mingle with some of the business leaders in the community, as well as then to learn more about JA, learn more about the impact, and celebrate our inductees for this year. And of course, it is a fundraising event for JA Southwestern Ontario. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that.
Tell me a little more about that component, Karen, the fundraising piece, yes, and why that's important to the work that you do.
Yeah, the fundraising piece is really important. We are a registered charity. We don't receive consistent core funding from any level of government or from the United Way or from any real organization like that. So we have to do all of our fundraising on an annual basis, and the proceeds from the gala go to support our work here in Waterloo Region, teaching young people about the financial wellness, the financial literacy, work readiness, and entrepreneurship skills that they need. So it's really important. And this is a difficult environment. I know you've had lots of guests on your show that operate in the charitable sector. Fundraising is a challenge. And so this is a great way to come out, help support a great cause, and then also celebrate what we're all about here in Waterloo Region.
You know, and we were talking a moment ago about these young people and how inspiring they are to see them get connected to some mentors and be inspired for entrepreneurship. An evening like this too, Karen, what a way to inspire the rest of the business community. You talk about these stalwarts that have been recognized in the past, and certainly by hosting an evening like this and celebrating these business success stories, it just shows that the way has been paved for the others that are on that road today.
Yes, it absolutely does. And oftentimes what we hear from people who attend the event and maybe don't know very much about JA, when they get a chance to talk to the students, we do have some students there. We have a few of our alumni who share their stories, and they learn more about what JA is about, and they come away inspired. And in fact, I've seen some folks who will listen to the stories of our students and say, I want to hire you. So if you're looking for talent, we are a good source of talent as well, which I know is often a challenge for businesses. So, it's a real win-win. And it does, you walk away from the evening just feeling great.
What can you tell us about this year's nominees?
Oh, we're very excited about this year's laureates. We have Dean McIntyre of the McIntyre Group, who's been inducted. And we're also honoring the co-founders of Alert Labs. And it's a trio of individuals, Ruth Castleman, George Zinzuris, and Kevin Wright. So we're very excited about this year's inductees.
What's the criteria? I'm sure there is a panel that goes through all of this, but what's the criteria for entry?
Yeah, so we receive nominations from the public, and we evaluate each of the nomination packages looking at the leadership that the individuals or the group of people who've been nominated have demonstrated over the course of their careers. We also look at the integrity and the vision with which they've operated their businesses.
So this is all happening on May the 5th at Binghamans. How can we take part and support the efforts?
Well, you can go online to jaswo.org/EHOF. You can learn more about the laureates. Of course, you can buy tickets, tables. There's some sponsorship opportunities available. We also have a silent auction as part of the evening's festivities. And so if you're a business or an individual who'd like to donate to the silent auction, we would welcome those donations as well.
How are we feeling at this point? We're mid-March. We're, like I said, 6-7 weeks away. Yep. I know these things don't happen by accident or overnight, Karen.
No, they don't.
How are we doing this far out from the event?
We're doing quite well, actually. We are about halfway sold out for our ticket sales. So at this junction, we're feeling very optimistic that we'll get close to sold out, which is about 250 people. And so get your tickets because there are limited space available.
All right. We'll remind you again, that website is jaswo.org/EHOF for Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. So jaswo.org/EHOF, and you can get tickets today. Karen Gallant is the president and CEO at JA Southwestern Ontario. Love the work that you do. Keep it up. And thank you very much for making time for the show.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your support and the opportunity to be here.
Looking forward to seeing you on May the 5th as well.
And we're looking forward to it too.
Karen Gallant joins us in studio on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. A Monday morning on the show means a number of traditional things, including our rant or rave open line hour. In fact, that takes us into Monday afternoon because we cover the morning time and the early afternoon time here on the show, going from 9 until 1 every day. So a long-standing tradition on this show is your opportunity to rant and or rave. And that means you can get some things off your chest. You're upset about them. You can rant, or you can share some good news and spread some of that positivity that you're famous for with your raves between noon and 1 today. Before we get there, about 45 minutes from now, just after the 11:30 news, David Drewe will be here with Drewe's Views. And one of the interesting things that David and I will be talking about is the now former chair of Niagara Region. And this is an interesting one because he is the former chair of Niagara Region because he resigned his position last week. Now, this was an appointed position. If I may go on the briefest of brief tangents here, it was an appointed regional chair, which is something that has been discussed as a possibility here in our region, right? The end of our two-tier municipal governance system whereby we elect councillors, 4 from Kitchener, 2 from Waterloo, 2 from Cambridge, and then the mayors in our area municipalities make up the rest of that council, plus an elected regional chair. What has been hinted at is the possibility of our regional chair being an appointment from the province, which, bluntly, I do not love. I think that if they are going to represent people of a region or a given community, they should be elected, not appointed from afar. But nonetheless, that's what's been discussed as a possibility, an appointed regional chair, and then the remainder of that regional council is made up by the elected mayors in this area, and they would have weighted votes. So, for example, the mayor of Kitchener, Barry Verbanovic, should he be reelected as mayor, and then, of course, as the mayor of the largest municipality in the area, his votes would carry more weight. I'm not even going to claim to understand what that would look like. I do favor the elimination of 2 tiers of local government. I think it gets in our way. In fact, I'm led to believe most recently that it is this 2-tier municipal government that's getting in the way of doing something really spectacular and exciting on the lands of the former Charles Street bus terminal, because it's not up to the region. The region doesn't have the capacity, unless we change our municipal act, to move forward with something like an arena, convention center, etc. It's just not part of its purview. The individual municipality has to do that in our 2-tier system. Anyway, getting back to the appointed regional chair, I really hope at some point we got to figure this out around here, don't we? 2 levels of local government is 1 level too many. 59 elected municipal councillors, mayors, chairs is, 39 too many? What are we doing around here? The now former chair of Niagara Region stepped down last week because it was learned that he had in his possession a copy of the Mein Kampf, which is, of course, Adolf Hitler's manifesto, and it was a signed copy of said manifesto. What I can't quite wrap my head around, and forgive me if I run afoul of any sensibilities here, you can always tell me that I'm doing that. Our phone lines are always open, and you know how to reach me via email, mike@570news.com. But I can't quite wrap my head around how being in possession of what is an historical text, something that is available in libraries, to be perfectly honest with you, something that I've always been interested in reading just to get a sense of this history and what was going on in the mind of Adolf Hitler when he wrote this in his imprisonment almost a century ago now. But nonetheless, just being in possession of this book led to the resignation of the chair of Niagara Region. I don't think that he cared much for the job anyway. He didn't need the job. He was already self-made and very wealthy. But I find it so interesting that all you did was have the book. what other historical artifacts can you not have in your possession if you want to hold some kind of public office? Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at on it, but I'm sure David Drewe will have thoughts on it. He's coming up at 11:30 this morning, just after the 11:30 a.m. news. And then just over 10 minutes from now, after the 11 a.m. news, it is a Monday, and that means This Week in Music History. We always have fun with that one, taking a trip down a musical memory lane. George in Cambridge is with us on the phones this morning. Good morning, George.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. As a historian, I too have something that people have questioned. I have a portrait of Robert E. Lee. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm for slavery or I'm for the South, the rebels. I'm just a historian who loves the Civil War. I read a lot up on it. But in this particular case, Mike, we'd have to check the individual. Does he have sympathies towards Hitler? Does he have sympathies towards Nazism? If it's just a collection from history, I don't know if there's a great crime in that.
Yeah, George, I appreciate that call. And when I came across this story last week, and again, David Drewe and I will get into it in more detail when he joins us for Drew's Views this morning, about 40 minutes from now. But I thought along those same lines. Having the book, and by the way, this now former chair of the region of Niagara has numerous historical artifacts in his collection because he is a bit of a history buff. If he was quoting from the Mein Kampf or setting policy based on the tenets of the Mein Kampf, that's a completely different kettle of fish. But if you have this book in your personal collection as somebody who collects historical artifacts, that alone is enough to have you removed from public office. I find it to be an interesting story, to say the very least. And again, I don't think Bob Gale, the now former chair of Niagara Region, gives a tinker's darn about the job. And he probably is like, I don't need this kind of hassle in my life. I'm just going to move on. Thank you very much. Because again, he was an appointed chair and he certainly did not need the job at all. But I think it's a completely different thing to own the historical artifact versus quoting it chapter and verse or using it to set policy in the modern day, just by way of some examples. That's how I view it. We'll find out how David Drewe views it when he joins us for Drew's Views this morning, just after 11:30. Clinton sends me an email, mike@570news.com. Says, happy Monday, Mike. As someone who strongly advocates for affordable housing, I still agree with you that the Charles Street terminal site should be used for attractions rather than housing. It's the middle class, individuals and families who have been priced out of the housing market and who are struggling to find affordable rental options. As much as we need housing that bridges the gap in today's market, I don't want to move into downtown Kitchener and raise my 2 children in a high-rise. Clinton, I appreciate the email. Farwell's Force member number 35. And look, if you want a condominium, I've said this many a time, we've got a condominium for you here in the region of Waterloo. It seems that everybody can have a condo, and we can make those affordable condominium units. We can make them townhouse units with some green space. We can do all kinds of different things. And I, too, like Clinton, am very much a supporter of affordable housing projects in our community. What I am saying when it comes to the former bus terminal in downtown Kitchener is that the affordable housing project doesn't have to be on this particular piece of public land. Dream with me for half a moment here, okay? Because to me, it looks like a pretty simple equation. If we were to dedicate that space in downtown Kitchener for the arena, convention center, whatever, big central place that will attract people into the core of our largest municipality, thus rendering the existing Kitchener Memorial Auditorium obsolete or redundant. Well, couldn't we then use some of that public land where the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium is today for affordable housing? You're right there on a transit line. You're right across the street from an elementary school. you're already in a residential neighborhood. I can see the possibility of a trade-off happening here so that we're still getting both of those things that our guest after 10 this morning wanted. Public land, in this case it would be City of Kitchener land on East Avenue, being used for affordable housing, and the community can get something that's pretty spectacular and helps to re-energize and revitalize and gives people interesting places to go. Because if we spend all of our times solving problems, I think we become a little bit boring. We have to figure out how to walk and chew gum at the same time. I want problem solvers on my municipal councils. I also want some dreamers. And maybe we can find some sort of happy medium there, because it feels like right now all we focus on are the problems. And there are some dreams that I don't think we should let die on the Charles Street operating table, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase. Let's get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then let's talk this week in music history. It's coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. They are the Bangles. You know that song, right? You could probably name it in 2 notes. A little bit of Manic Monday as we usher in our Monday 11 a.m. weekly tradition of This Week in Music History with our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison. He joins us every Monday at this time. And don't forget, please, about Brian's Facebook page of that same name. This Week in Music History, you'll find these tidbits and so much more, because Brian has a deep appreciation for music, loves to share that appreciation with you. So every Monday morning on the show and on Facebook, This Week in Music History, as Brian joins us again this morning. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, Mike.
Let's start with that Bangles song and Manic Monday. And this week in 1986, the Bangles were number 2 on the charts.
Just pure pop gold, isn't it?
It is.
Just one of those songs that as soon as you hear it, you go, yeah, that's going to go way up in the charts. Just very, very catchy song. So, yeah, it was March 15th, 1986, and the Bangles hit number 2 on both sides of the Atlantic, in the UK and in the US singles chart, with Manic Monday. And I think a lot of people are aware this was a song that was written by Prince. He originally wrote the song under a pseudonym. Sorry, can't say that word.
A pseudonym?
Oh my gosh, pseudonym, thank you.
I'm here for you.
My Monday morning. Pseudonym Christopher, and Christopher was the name of a character in his movie Under the Cherry Moon. He often used it to write songs. So Prince had this song in his catalog, and he had originally offered it to one of his protege bands. He was working with a girl group called the Apollonia Six. You might remember Apollonia Cotero. She starred with Prince as his love interest in Purple Rain, and she had a group that Prince was working with. So he had offered this song to them. Didn't really go very well. The recording wasn't that great. The song didn't sound as good as Prince wanted it. But he had this serious crush on this gal from the Bangles, Susanna Hoffs, the lead singer. Prince was romancing her, and he decided to offer it to the Bangles. So the Bangles loved the song. It was just the kind of pop, catchy song that they wanted. And, of course, they took it right to number 2. It did not reach number 1. Guess what song kept it out of the number 1 spot?
1986. What song would have kept Manic Monday out of the number 1 spot? 86. Something from Top Gun.
No.
Okay.
Irony is the key here. It was actually Prince's song, Kiss.
Of course.
Prince charted number 1 with Kiss, and that song was also number 1 on both sides of the Atlantic, and it kept his own song that he'd given to the Bangles out of the top spot. But still, a very nice chart performance for the Bangles, and it kind of kick-started their career.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's this week in 1986. This week, 1 year later, Brian, in 1987, one of the biggest albums, I would say not just of the 80s, but of all time.
Oh, my God. It just didn't get much bigger than this. So March 21st, 87, you've got Irish rockers U2 climbing to the top of the UK charts with their fifth album, The Joshua Tree. And I think The Joshua Tree just took U2 to, the toppermost level of the poppermost. It had such great songs on it, With or Without You. I still haven't found what I'm looking for, Where the Streets Have No Name. It would become the UK's fastest-selling album ever at the time, and it was the first CD to move more than 1 million units, so a pretty impressive performance. It remained on the British charts for an astonishing 156 weeks. That's 3 full years almost, and eventually would be one of the world's best-selling records with only over 25 million copies sold. It hit number one in the U.S., it hit number one in Canada, in several other countries across the pond as well. Just a massive record, a massive tour, which was, of course, captured on the album Rattle and Hum, which came a year later. And yeah, it really didn't get much bigger than U2 by the time this album was at the height of its popularity. Some interesting trivia about it. The lead-off single from Joshua Tree, With or Without You, almost wasn't included on the album. The band really struggled with recording it in the studio. Brian Eno thought it might be a little light, a little conventional for U2. They sort of, were that post-punk band, and he thought it might be a little light. But they pressed on, and The Edge added this great guitar outro, which has now become famous to the song, and it charted very well. It did very well, and was a great lead-off single for the Joshua Tree.
Yeah, the lead-off single, With or Without You, the song that starts the album, Where the Streets Have No Name. I have often tried to argue, Brian, that it's the best opening track to any album ever. Just that slow build. Now, I'm not going to claim to know the opening track to every album ever, but that one's got to be up there with Where the Streets Have No Name to be the first song on an album. What an introduction to the Joshua Tree.
I agree, and it's become an arena staple. I mean, you're in sporting arenas all the time. How many times do you hear Where the Streets Have No Name when at a sporting event is getting started? The team skating out or the ball players are hitting the field. I mean, it's just one of those songs that everybody recognizes and loves.
Absolutely. Okay, let's jump to very recent times. This week in 2018, so only 8 years ago. And who else but Drake reaching number one? Wow. I mean, who is bigger than Drake at this point? So, yeah, Drake was number one on the U.S. singles chart. Drake, this is our CanCon for the week. Great artist out of Toronto. And he charted number one on the U.S. singles charts with the song God's Plan. It was the lead single from his fifth studio album, Scorpion. Topped the Hot 100 for 11 weeks and spent 26 weeks in the top 10. And it actually broke the first day streaming records on both Apple Music and Spotify with the most number of downloads at that time in 2018. And the song was very popular. God's Plan went on to top the charts in 14 different countries. So a great showing for relatively local artist Drake, who was, pretty much at the top of the hip-hop world at that point. No question about it. Like getting a little bit of Canadian content into here. This week in 2010, Brian, we lost the co-founder of the band Big Star. Big Star and the Box Tops. So, sadly, Alex Chilton passed away at age 59. And Alex had come up at a very young age. He was a Memphis-born singer, songwriter, guitar player. He was just 16 years old when he recorded the song The Letter with the Box Tops, which topped the charts in 1967. So a lot of people will remember that song, The Letter. That was Alex Chilton. After a few years with the Box Tops, he kind of wanted to stake out and start a different band, and he formed this band Big Star along with Chris Bell and Andy Hummel and Jody Stevens. And they were a fantastic band. I mean, the album that they put out was called Number One Record, which I thought was always kind of cute. Great aspirations there. But as great as it was, it's still one of my favorite albums of all time. It didn't get
push from the record company that it needed to do really, really well. And it sort of stayed this underground record for years. But a lot of bands, a lot of artists were listening to that record in the 70s, number one album by Big Star. And you've got groups like REM, Cheap Trick, the Bangles, as we mentioned before, the Lemonheads, the Counting Crows. They all will say that Big Star was a major influence on them. And even today, when Rolling Stone magazine or Uncut magazine or any of these music magazines do a poll about, sort of bands that should have been way bigger than they end up, almost every single one, Big Star will be in the top one or two. Everybody's always said that they should have been a bigger band, but they just never got there.
Brian Allison joins us every Monday morning at 11 a.m. for a look back at this week in music history. Don't forget, he's got a Facebook page of the same name, so he can share more stories just like this and through the week to keep you satisfied, that appetite fed between Monday morning appearances here on the show. The Facebook page is the same name as this segment, This Week in Music History. Find it on Facebook. Listen here every Monday morning at 11. And after this break, look, it's a couple of brothers who became songwriting legends. Am I a terrible person? Because they are songwriting legends, but am I a terrible person if I say I wish they never had become songwriting legends? We'll tell you who they are coming up. Plus, tragedy strikes not just Eric Clapton, but Reba McEntire on This Week in Music History. Those stories still coming up as we continue on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings at this time, we are joined by our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison for a look back at This Week in Music History, sharing stories of what happened very recently. 2018, we had Drake stories only 8 years ago, but we're going to go back to 1991 with this next story, and a terrible tragedy, Brian, that leads to an outcome. And how often do we hear about artists writing from their personal experience or their personal pain and the greatness that comes out of it?
Yeah, this is a real tearjerker. I apologize for putting this on Monday morning when everybody's trying to start their week, but it was a huge event in the world of music at the time. So it was March 20th, 1991, and Eric Clapton, more Canadian content actually, because Eric Clapton, as you may or may not know, is half Canadian. So that's pretty cool. We'll add that to our storyline for today.
I like it.
Clapton's 4-year-old son, Connor, was at an apartment in New York City with his mother. The housekeeper was cleaning the room, left a low-hanging window in the apartment opened. Connor ran towards the window and went right out through it and fell tragically to his death, 53 stories. So this was an awful, awful, sad story. Eric Clapton and his wife, Laurie Del Santo, were just crushed by the loss of their 4-year-old son. Eric had just been with him the day before, took him to the circus in New York, was planning to see him later that day as well, and this was just a tragic, tragic accident. But, I mean, as you said, as you pointed out, as artists will do, Eric channeled this into his music, and it ended up being written in the song Tears in Heaven. Tears in Heaven was originally featured in the movie Rush as part of the soundtrack, and it went on to become a huge, huge single. He wrote it with Will Jennings, and Will Jennings had also written some other songs. My Heart Will Go On from Titanic, another bit of a tearjerker. Up Where We Belong, which was in a movie soundtrack as well, Officer and a Gentleman. And so this song did very, very well in the charts. It was an instant hit almost. And then in the Grammy Awards the following year, in 1993, lo and behold, Tears in Heaven won Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best Male Pop Vocal of the Year for Eric Clapton. So good on Eric for taking that bit of tragedy in his life and channeling it into his art and making it a song that people really resonated with. Absolutely.
Powerful song, and what a story that inspired it. Okay, it was on this very day back in 1991 that more tragedy, this time around connected to country singer and legend, frankly, Reba McEntire.
Yeah, it was. It was quite a tragic story as well. So March 16th, 1991, Reba was playing a show. It was actually a show they did in San Diego, California for IBM employees, private event. The band had come in and they were flying out that night. And Reba decided to stay behind with her husband and spend an extra night in San Diego, but her band was going on a private plane. Sadly, the plane did not arrive at its destination and crashed just outside of California near the Mexican border. 7 members of Reba's band and her road manager were among the 10 people on that plane who perished. An incredibly sad event for Reba McEntire. And she would also channel this loss of her band members into her art. In 1991, later that year, she recorded and released the album For My Broken Heart, which was dedicated to her fallen bandmates. So it was a very, very sad event, very tragic. And Reba, of course, spent some time recovering from that and reformed a new band and went on to continue her career as a recording artist.
All right, one more before we let you go today, Brian, and this takes us back to this week in 1978. Now, I mentioned before the commercial, I know this isn't kind, and I recognize they are who they are, and they are the legends that they are. I hope I don't come across as too terrible, though, if I say I wish that they never had started writing songs together, these brothers, because I'm just not a fan of this style of music, okay? So there you go. I'm just being honest about it.
You're allowed to do that, though.
Thank you.
That's the great thing about music. You can take from it what you love and leave from it what you don't love. There are lots of fans out there of the Bee Gees, and they've done extremely well with their career, obviously. I think there was a sentiment in the 70s, probably around the time this was happening, late 70s, that radio stations in particular became very anti-Bee Gee because it had just been overkill. They had spent the years before with the soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever dominating the airwaves. You know, you could not turn on a radio station and not hear a Bee Gees song somewhere. They were just everywhere. And many radio stations started to have what they call Bee Gee free weekends. So they were advertising, we're going to play music all weekend, but we're not going to play any Bee Gees. So tune in if you want to hear some music that doesn't include the Bee Gees. So yeah, I think you're not alone in that. But in 1978, as I said, these guys were just everywhere. And this week in music history in 1978, they scored a record that's never been repeated to this day. They had the top 3 songs on the U.S. singles chart, 1, 2, and 3, but all performed by different artists. So the number 1 spot was held by Night Fever, which was performed by the Brothers Gibb, their band, the Bee Gees. Number 2 was held by brother Andy Gibb with his song, Love is Thicker Than Water. And then the number 3 song came in by a song called Emotion by Samantha Sang, which was also written by the Brothers Gibb. So these guys, their songwriting abilities, like it or not, it's not everybody's style, but I mean, they were able to produce hits. They were able to write songs that people liked and that sold very, very well. And, you could arguably say that they were the most successful recording artists of the 1970s. Beyond that, it didn't translate so well. Again, I think because they had so much airtime in the 70s, by the time the 80s rolled around, people were a little Bee Gee tired. And, they had trouble being recognized on the airwaves after the 1970s because of that.
It was certainly an era and a significant one, albeit short. And, Brian, you got me thinking now. I had a different idea in mind coming into the show this week for our All Request Friday. But in honor of this, and let me just throw it at you kind of cold here, but given what the Bee Gees accomplished, and we're talking disco here, do you think we could put enough non-Bee Gees disco music together for an All Request Friday? Do you think the listeners could pull that off?
Oh, God, yeah. There were so many hits in the late 70s around disco. I mean, I could fill your playlist in 10 minutes with great songs from the disco era. Yeah, there was a ton. And don't forget, a lot of bands who weren't disco artists recorded disco songs. You've got Rod Stewart dabbling in disco. You've got hard rock bands like Kiss dabbling in disco. Even the Rolling Stones recorded some disco songs. So I think you could make a great playlist of it. I would love it.
Okay, that's what we're doing. I'm calling it on the spot. I was going to do something different, but in honor of the Bee Gees and their top 3 spots on the charts on This Week in 1978, we're going disco for All Request Friday this week.
All right, I'll get my hits in early, my requests in early.
Sounds great. Always love these chats, Brian. Thanks as always for being here.
Okay, see you next Monday.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Brian Allison is a musicologist who operates a Facebook page and joins us this week, or every Monday at this time, for This Week in Music History. It's the same name for Brian's Facebook page, This Week in Music History. I know you enjoy these strolls down memory lane musically, and you can get more of the same and then some over on the This Week in Music History Facebook page. So I'm going to shelf the idea that I had, and I usually use this time of the show to let you know what the theme will be for this week's All Request Friday. The cat is now out of the bag. In honor of the brothers Gibb and their remarkable chart success this week in music history. And even though I have no taste for the musical style, we're going to go disco for this week's theme on All Request Friday. So get your favorite disco tunes sent in to me via email, mike@570news.com, or give Jen a call. She's on the other side of the glass answering the phones. We'll start compiling your disco requests for this week's All Request Friday. Time to get you to an update from the 570 News Center. And then David Drewe is here, and Drewe's Views is coming up next for yous here on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years. But you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree-planting highballers east of Prince George.
That is our friend David Drewe, who joins us Monday mornings, 11:30, to share his views. We call it Drewe's Views. David is a former Conservative Party staffer, worked for Harold Albrecht when Harold was the MP for Kitchener-Conestoga. And David now owns and operates Negotiating Change, Government Relations and Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. Happy Monday morning, good sir.
Last week I said, what a great day. And I'm not going to lie to you, this is a miserable day out there, Mike.
Even what's coming in the window, if you can call that light, is honestly miserable.
Yeah, and it's not even that rain is falling. The rain is just standing there waiting for you to walk into it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into this. Speaking of walking into things, a former NDP member walks into the Liberal caucus. It sounds like a good start of a good joke, doesn't it?
It really, really does. There's so much to this. There are so many angles. Like, first of all, proportionately, the NDP has lost more of their caucus to floor crossers now than the Conservatives have. That is weird. Second of all, apparently this woman was rumored, but this really did come out of nowhere. The announcement came from Don Davies' office, and everybody's sort of trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, how did they figure this out in advance? And my honest to God assumption is that Laurie Idlout, the MP who crossed the floor, sent notification to Don Davies' office because she wasn't being a schmuck about it. She was being classy. I do not look at... Okay, first of all, none of it. They have no party system except for federal elections. So there's not this same level of vitriol for crossing the floor that there's going to be anywhere else in the country. Number two, if you ignore the fact that so much of this stuff was re-announcement and you look at the package of announcements that Mark Carney put on the table for none of it, you're talking about a university. You're talking about multi-use bases being put up, and you can go through this list of like $30-some billion of investments that are committed, and this is for a community the population of Woolwich. You gotta put that into perspective. And the one thing that she keeps saying is this stuff is going on, and my constituents are telling me that I'm on the side of complaining about it rather than shaping it. like, I can't think of any other MP in the country who would be able to make that argument. Like, okay, so I said, okay, for a population the size of a Woolwich, $36 billion each. So now let's just say Kitchener-Conestoga as a whole, instead of, 38,000, we're now talking about 200,000. I'm using population, not voters. How much does it cost to buy the MP for Kitchener-Conestoga to cross the floor? Well, if you prorate it, about 4 times $36 billion, you know what I mean? You can't do it, except there. But the one thing that is very similar, though, is I find it amazing that she endorsed Avi Lewis like a week and a bit before crossing the floor. And why, how, like, that's the part of it. I just totally explained how I could see her crossing the floor. But I can't see somebody who endorsed Avi Lewis crossing the floor to the Liberals.
But this is the stuff that really...
Avi Lewis is running against the military investments that she crossed the floor for.
This is the part that gets me so upset when these things happen. I'm sorry, David. It's got me almost to the point where I might not vote again, because this is what you get. It's like, oh, I'm resigning to spend more time with my family. Oh, I guess I spent enough time, or they didn't like me. I'm crossing the floor and coming back. Stop it. Why do you lie to us?
Okay, 9 times out of 10, when people talk about floor crossings with that tone, I say, yeah, you're engaged in loser talk. But you don't have any skin in this game as a partisan, so I can't say that to you. But I really do think there has been so much misrepresentation about what the Westminster system is, that if you take this away, what are we left with? Presidential power unchecked in a parliamentary system that has none of the checks and balances that the presidential system has. Like, when Don Davies gets up and says that this is a moral offense, he is showing his ignorance of the system. But the problem is, everybody who benefits from this sounds kind of craven when they defend it. And everybody who's attacking it sounds morally suasive when they attack it. And I just generally say it's loser talk. You know what? If you don't want to lose people to floor crossing, make yourself attractive to your own caucus first. But yeah, Michael Moss showing up at the Conservative Christmas party and then going to the Liberal Christmas party the next day. This reminds me of that. And again, it is the worst part of it. That is the worst part of it. I'm not against it, but yeah, this whole double dealing side of things is the worst part of it.
You got me on the Westminster system, David. I should really just appreciate what it is that we have here as far as that system is concerned.
No, but yeah, like that's just it. We've chipped away too much of it already.
Yeah.
But the solution is not to make it even weaker.
Okay. I defer to you on that point. You are absolutely correct, sir. But I still get my chafes chapped on these things.
Can we get that zipped filed so we can use the soundbite? That you were absolutely correct, sir?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just for you. Okay, you're going to have to help me on this one, too, because you are far smarter than I am. But I don't remember a massive Paul Martin-sized majority. Did I miss that one? So you're comparing Mark Carney and the massive Paul Martin.
Yeah.
What was that majority? When?
Well, that exactly.
Okay. So I didn't miss it.
Well, no, but remember all that was standing between Paul Martin and I forget, and all the polls agreed that if the election was held, he would have got so many seats, and it was like would have been a record-breaking majority. The only thing between him and that majority was Jean Chrétien. And then Jean Chrétien left, and apparently governing was harder. The only thing between Mark Carney right now and that massive Paul Martin-sized majority is the need for an election call. Why are you going to call an election? Paul Martin was never able to deliver on that majority because as soon as he got into the position of being number one rather than number two, speaking out of both sides of your mouth got really, really noticed. And it's harder to do that in policy than it is just in rhetoric. Right now, I think Mark Carney could get that majority. I really, really do. I think you were following...
If he goes to an election.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I think you were following one of the exchanges I had with Ryan Simper, where he was like, 84,000 job losses is not exactly the context to go in. And I would normally agree, but I think that just raises fears. And the Liberals are very, very good into playing about fears of Trump. And if this election is all about Trump again, it is going to favor the Liberals again. after the midterms, we don't know what's going to be up with Trump. We don't know whether his wings are going to be clipped or not. So if I'm a liberal, I want to go sooner.
He's gotten a majority anyway, though.
Well,
I mean, I'm assuming Bill Blair and Chrystia Freeland's ridings.
Yes,
so.
And I am. Now, he still wants to win Terrebonne because the difference between a majority and that one extra seat is you don't have to have the speaker every time voting to close everything. So that one extra seat that they would get from Terrebonne is still important to them. But now they're in this position where every Tom, Dick, and Harry in that caucus can threaten to leave and cost them the majority. You know what I mean? Now the shoe's on the other foot, where it used to be, hey, what $36 billion of spending can we do to you across the floor, Mr. Farwell? Now it's, well, how much is it going to cost to keep you in the fold, Mr. Farwell? And they could be quite vulnerable to that. You're seeing evidence of some independent thought coming with, I can't remember the BC MP's name right now, who spoke out thoughtfully against Mark Carney's initial position on Iran. By the way, CTV question period on the weekend, they were still talking about Mark Carney's government's foreign policy flubs over India and Iran. I felt guilty talking about that last Monday like it was still old news. But apparently, there is something sticky about this that is keeping it in the news. And I don't quite understand why it was still fresh yesterday. But there was something newsworthy they felt about it that still needed to be regurgitated.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on, and I don't want to detract too much because I want to make sure we get to the Mein Kampf story from Niagara region. But just going back to what you mentioned about you and Ryan Simper online, I love your little corner of the internet. When I stumble across it and follow the conversations, 84,000 job losses, not exactly the right place to...
Ryan is a conservative.
Yes.
And I am a conservative.
Yes.
Have you noticed how rarely we agree with each other? We are like, no, that's just it. We nuance each other. It's not about our philosophical beliefs that we come into horrible disagreement. It's just in our interpretation of what the correct response to the maelstrom going on around us is.
Well, have you read Paul Wells's interview with Pierre Poilievre? Because if you haven't...
How long ago was this?
Like 4 days, maybe?
No, I have not done.
It's very... So this is not Pierre Poilievre speaking, I'll grant you. And sometimes his delivery can be chafing, but everything that Mr. Poilievre was saying hit the right note for me, because he was taking the issues that Mark Carney is dealing with and bringing them back to
the kitchen table,
exactly, my dinner table. And I thought, boy, Mr. Poilievre, brilliant stuff. And I found myself reading, like I was devouring this exchange. It was the Q&A posted by Paul Wells. And I'm like, you're hitting all the right notes. This is what people need to hear. How can he get this out aside from a Q&A written from Paul Wells?
And, you know, how can he not get... Okay, first, leader of the opposition, when you're actually talking substantively, it's hard to get headlines.
Sure.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And second of all, you know, yeah, I'm sure it was a great interview, but how many people heard it versus Jamil Javani?
Sure.
And like that's the challenge he faces. He needs to be substantive, and that generally does not gather headlines. He needs to be seen to be substantive, but if you're being substantive, nobody wants to see you. So it's this vicious circle he's got to break out of. But if he could be consistent with this and keep taking this tone, what is also going to happen is most of the people in caucus are going to start mirroring that tone, because that's what they do in Ottawa. Everybody, have you noticed all the people who talk about the economy in the Liberal caucus are the people who used to talk about climate in the Liberal caucus? Isn't it amazing?
It's pretty interesting.
No, but that's just it. Conservatives, it'll be the same thing. If Poilievre takes on a respectful, like, content-full tone, that will get mirrored, and that tone will get noticed eventually.
It was intelligent. It was thoughtful. It spoke to my pocketbook.
Nobody's ever accused that guy of being stupid.
Absolutely.
Just treating us like we're stupid.
I recommend it. Paul Wells in Conversation. I think it's a free part of his Substack.
Okay.
So anyway, cool. Paul Wells, Pierre Poilievre, I think you'll enjoy the read should you get a chance to do that. David Drewe with us in studio, as he is every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drewe's Views. We'll take a break. When we come back, the gift card for the teachers, and Bob Gale, the gale force wind that blows him out of office because he owns an historical text. We'll talk about it as we continue the Mike Farwell Show and Drewe's Views on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings, 11:30 is our time for Drewe's Views. David Drewe is the person sharing those views, former Conservative Party staffer. Let's talk about Niagara Region and its now former appointed chair, Bob Gale. He just quit, and it didn't take him long. I don't think he really cared for the job. That might be an aside, but he just stepped away because it was learned that he has a signed by the author copy of Mein Kampf in his collection of books. Of course, the author is none other than Adolf Hitler.
And so, of course, if you own a book, you must subscribe to its beliefs.
Well, this is the challenge that I have here, David. I've never actually read it, but I've always been curious to, and I'm pretty sure I can go to my local library and take out a copy.
I'm pretty sure there's a few courses you could take in university where it would be required
also
for you to read it.
Yeah.
And I like how you also said as part of his collection, because that's just it. You know what I mean? If he had an extensive collection of one copy of Mein Kampf signed by Hitler, that would be weird. And that would be, I don't want to say disqualifying in any way, but I'd have a few more questions and I'd be wanting to chat with the guy just a little bit more. But he's got a historical collection valued in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is a very, very small fraction of that. So he's a legitimate collector. And yeah, I can understand how that would be a collectible, an artifact. But some people raised it as an issue that somehow disqualifies him from serving as regional chair. And rather than sitting there and fighting it out, he just said, screw it. I'm out of here, guys. Screw you guys. I'm going home. I don't respect that from somebody who signed on for the job. But I got to say, when you're of a certain age and you're taking on these sunset positions and all of a sudden they go south on you, it's easier just to say, nah, I'm going south for the winter and cottaging for the summer. I'm out of here, guys.
Yeah, like he doesn't need the money by any stretch. He was appointed, so I'd walk.
And he got involved to get involved with specific issues, not to sit there and almost geez, am I going to have to defend Hitler to keep this job? No, I don't even want to be talking about Hitler. How can I stop talking about Hitler? I have to leave my job. Yay, it's a victory for somebody. I don't know who would call this a victory, but as we were talking during the break, you found somebody who thought it was a bit of a victory, I guess.
Yes, as somebody who is currently elected to our public school board. And I think these sorts of victory laps online should be noted when we go to the polls again in October.
Especially if you are, shall we say, a trustee with a history of engendering lawsuits for censoring other or attempting to censor other people's speech.
It is a...
once bitten, twice shy, buddy.
It is a public profile of one Scott Piatkowski that takes the victory lap on Bob Gale in this regard.
I didn't vote for him.
Nor I.
Okay, next.
Okay, next is a $750 gift card for your favorite teacher.
And I find this so weird. And I was trying to find reasons to hate it. Why not just give the money to the school boards so the teachers have it? And I'm like, well, $750 per teacher. How much would actually land in the teacher's pocket if it went through the bureaucracy of the school board? And
they just spend it all on lawsuits.
Well, boy, that's a good local joke. Yeah, but that's just it. How much money would be left going to the teachers? How much money would be spent administering it? Just for school boards to justify that it was actually spent on the proper stuff. Instead, no, the government set up an online portal. Each teacher gets an account to spend on designated supplies from that portal. He basically cut out all the bureaucracy of it. And I'm sitting here thinking this is quite a conservative approach to solving a problem that... If you'd have told me 20 years ago, you know what? We're going to end up giving gift cards to teachers so they could buy school supplies, I would have picked up a raw fish and slapped you with it. It's wait, what? But here I am now going, this is actually a better solution to this one micro problem. than throwing the money into the pot and saying, go spend it over there and hoping that the trickle down reaches it.
I suppose, but it is a bit of a bizarro world we're living in, where teachers are getting and a $750 gift card for supplies. Come on.
Well, but that's just it. I don't really know how far that goes in terms of what the needs are. I imagine if you're an art teacher, it goes a lot. It does not go anywhere near as far as if you were a history teacher. If you're the shop teacher, I don't know how much wood $750 buys at today's lumber market. I don't know.
All right. We're down to like 60 seconds. Do you want to touch on the amalgamation of conservation authorities?
Yeah. So apparently they're looking at having only the big cities represented in the governance of the new conservation authorities and leaving the small towns out.
Do we count as a big city?
I believe we would as the region and as a cities, but no longer would New Hamburg, which tends to get flooded every few years. No longer would Drayton, which tends to get flooded all the time. You know what I mean? So I'm curious about this governance change, and it could be that this is going to be very, very good for growth, because these cities that are being told you have to grow by X amount and don't have enough access to water, I don't know who we're talking about there, but I could see how it could make sense. But I can also see how it might be a giant, giant disaster, depending on how the players go at the table. So I'm not against it, but I'm waving a giant yellow flag to say, let's pay attention to the details here.
All right. And we will do that as we wrap things up for today. It's always fun. I will save you the clip of you being right. And we look forward to next week.
We can open with that next week, maybe.
We will open with that next week. David Drewe, Monday mornings, 11:30 with Drew's Views. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And I am utterly adorable as always.
As always. Rant or Rave coming up next. Open phone lines for you on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
It is that time of day where we open up the phone lines to hear directly from you on the issues of the day. And on Mondays, that means this hour is devoted to your rants and or your raves. You rant because you're upset about something. You rave because you're not. It's really that simple. You can get it off your chest and onto the air, and it's as simple as making a phone call to us. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. I see several things that we could rant about and or discuss, maybe come up with solutions for. I will begin, though, with a wee bit of a rave, if you want, if you don't mind. And that is for our Kitchener Rangers, who continue to make a charge towards first place in the Western Conference of the Ontario Hockey League. 3 games to go in the season. And tomorrow night's game at the Memorial Auditorium is going to be the big one, right? We play the Flint Firebirds, and if Kitchener can pick up a point, just a point, get to overtime, get to a shootout, the Rangers will clinch first place in the Western Conference. And the next closest team to Kitchener in that Western Conference is, of course, the Flint Firebirds. So you can earn first place by beating the team next closest to you in the standings. It seems to me rather poetic that we have this game coming our way tomorrow night. The Kitchener Rangers have put themselves in this position thanks to the tremendous season they have had. So I want to rave for just a moment about those young lads, young boys, as the head coach, UC Ahokas, calls them, in blue and red, who have thrilled us all season long. We're awfully close as we head into the final week of the regular season. Big game tomorrow night at the Memorial Auditorium. On the rantier side, if you will, a few things going on, not the least of which is the party in the University District, uptown Waterloo. There wasn't a big crowd on the weekend, although we did get the warning on Saturday afternoon from police to avoid a university neighborhood because of the high volume of individuals in the streets. So despite I'm not going to call them our best efforts because I think our efforts are a joke, but despite our claims, I'll use that language, despite our claims that we do not want this party and we are taking steps to stop it. Newsflash, no, we're not. But despite our claims that we don't want the party and we are taking steps to stop it, university students gathered in the streets on the weekend anyway. So be it. It happens every year. And I'm not unconvinced it's done happening already. Tomorrow is actually St. Paddy's Day, after all. So there might be more crowds and more partying on the streets tomorrow. We have not yet removed ourselves from the area and any safeguards that have been put in place to keep the attendees of the party safe. So we can go on about our frustration with the party if we want. I am 100% over it. I wish we would just be upfront about this and acknowledge that we don't want to stop the party at all. We have no interest in stopping the party. We have no intention of stopping the party. The only thing we have an intention of doing is continuing to fund the safe control of that party so the attendees do not get badly hurt. Simple as that. Because if we really want to stop the party, I've told you too many times now, and I won't waste any more of your energy on it, but we just have to change reading week, and that'll stop the party. But since we won't do that, I remain convinced that we want the party. So have the party. Just be honest about it. That's my beef. That's my rant. My rant is to municipal officials who keep saying they want to stop the party, and they're going to stop the party when they're not actually trying to stop the party. So that's point one. Point two, how about that sniper? I mean, how about the guy on the balcony with a high-powered rifle and a scope keeping an eye on the party down below? I got questions. First of all, nobody's really going to get shot, right? Nobody's getting shot. So, I don't know. Why not a drone? Why not somebody with binoculars to watch from above? I'm confused a little bit about that. And probably more unsettling and uncomfortable for me is the idea that when a large crowd gathers, this is what public safety and or protection looks like today. I don't like the message that is sending to me about the world and really, because it happened in Waterloo this weekend, the community that I'm living in. I mean, I'm sure as hell not going to be at the party, but the fact that something could happen at such a large gathering that we require the services of a sniper, I'm not okay with this. I am flat out 100% not okay with this. That's point two. And point three, how about Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who is calling on the federal government to allow Ontarians to legally carry and use pepper spray for self-defense? What could possibly go wrong if we all carried a canister of pepper spray to use as self-defense? I can't see a problem with that at all. Can you? These are some things that are on my mind. Rant or rave is the chance for you to share with us what is on yours. Let's get to the phones. We'll start with Sean, who is Farwell's Force member number 165. Good afternoon, Sean.
Good afternoon. I've been monitoring the international news, and I don't know whether to laugh or cry right now. Do you remember at the beginning of this whole Iranian situation, Donald Trump said they had the bestest military in the whole world, and they didn't want any interference from anybody. They didn't need the Europeans. They don't want any help, and they're going to do it all on their own. And now they're calling for help to secure the straits, and they're saying bad things are going to happen if they don't get help and all that. It's like, what is he doing? You know, it's just, why do we have such incompetent people with such power in their hands? What I want to know.
Sean, it's an excellent, if not eternal question. I might ask a similar question around here these days, and I know that comes across as unkind, scathing, hypercritical, and I don't mean to be that, but when I look at what's going on locally when it comes to leadership, I sadly I'm not seeing much in the way of that leadership. I don't see any great vision looking forward. I don't see a whole lot of competence in managing what we need to manage right now today. I'm having a hard time. I really am. And maybe it comes from just getting older and crankier. I don't know. But I'm having a hard time finding the bright lights locally who are truly showing leadership in this community, as opposed to just, I don't know, I guess, do they read the reports? They might read the reports and moving on and nodding in agreement when it comes time to do so on councils. I don't know, but I'm not sure we're in a great place. Our budgets have been blown all out of whack. The water is an absolute mess. We completely gummed up the speed camera program and rollout. Like, what else? What's going to be the next shoe to drop here in the region? Kyle, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I have a rant against Trump. So he makes fun of all his allies, and then he goes and puts himself in a war against Iran. And now he's telling us that he needs all our help, and NATO's gotten get involved for the war that he's in. So is this just going to be the same war that was about September 9/11, where it's going to be 20 years, or is this going to be the same war for that, where we're going to be suckered in to a 20-year war with the United States again on the war that they caused? It's a joke. It's an absolute joke that he can just go and berate every single person. And I hope to everything that we do not, and other nations that stand together, do not go with the United States and let them fight this war on their own, because the fact that you can just go and say that we did nothing for the 20 years when we fought next to the United States, and now all of a sudden you want our help, I hope to God we don't help them. So that's my rant there, Mike. Thank you.
All right, Kyle, appreciate the call. I'm sure you're not alone in that. And I'm equally sure that some would love to see Canada get involved with their allies south of the border, right? Jason is next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Jason.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Mike. I got to I got to rant against you a little bit. Sorry, since I've been doing this a lot. But, you know, when you speak of municipal leadership and in generalities, you know, I don't think you should generalize that there's no leadership, and putting the city of Kitchener or city of Waterloo and the city of Cambridge and the townships and connect them all to the region or one to another. You know, we are doing good things in the city of Kitchener. You know, we will be opening up the Cowan Recreation Center later this year. You know, you had staff and another councillor on your show last week talking about potholes, showing leadership that, hey, this is what, you know, getting that messaging out there. And so I understand that there are some other things that are coming into play, but, you know, to kind of generalize that there's no leadership, you know, I think it's a bit unfair.
I think that's a fair point. I try to be more careful about generalizations, but I'm feeling it, Jay. I really am around here these days. This is the community where I grew up, and it feels as though there isn't anybody leading the way. Why are we in this water situation?
Well, you know, obviously I can't speak to that because, you know, we look after the water that comes into your house, but we don't look after anything else as a city. And so, you know, I know that probably lends to your frustration about two-tier governments. All I know is, you know, our staff are working very hard with the region to come up with solutions. And I believe the region is coming up with some solutions that they think is going to take. But yeah, and you're not wrong. There are lots of things that are fundamentally wrong about whether it's provincial politics or federal politics or world politics or even local politics. But I can assure you from the city of Kitchener standpoint, not just because, because I am on council, that we have very good people working on behalf of our citizens, getting things done. And you may not always hear the things that we're talking about in the future. Obviously you don't. But I tell you, we're doing really good. We're doing, you know, compared to other cities across the province, City of Kitchener by far stands above them and beyond, I believe, as far as what we offer to our constituents at a very low tax increase. You know, you mentioned taxes. We were 2.9 under inflation, one of the lowest tax base increases in the province. And so, you know, we can look around us and see that there are some flaws in other municipalities, but from a City of Kitchener standpoint, I think we're doing very, very well.
Jason, I appreciate the call and the reminder to take care when it comes to the generalities. Listen, I don't want to seem like I'm playing favorites because of where I live, but here is a snapshot from where I'm sitting as to what the region looks like. I actually do think Kitchener is doing a fantastic job. And that's top to bottom, including our ability as a media outlet to get access to interviews with staff like who came on last week and gave us great insight into the whole pothole issue and how they're dealing with it and this, that, the other thing. I think Kitchener across the board doing a very good job. And Jason mentioned those tax increases in line with or just under inflation for a decade now. I don't think there's a whole lot to complain about in that regard. Waterloo, don't get me started on the what I would call out of control spending, the highest of our municipalities next to the region when it comes to tax increases over this term of Waterloo Council. And I'm just learning through our news center that having reached out to Waterloo Mayor Dorothy McCabe to talk about this sniper presence at the St. Paddy's Day party on the weekend. Mayor McCabe was quoted in an article from the Canadian Press, but is declining our interview request here at the radio station. That is a curious turn of events. Like something has happened, right? Since the mayor came forward with her comments to, 12 or 18 or so hours later. Anyway, I think that's interesting. But I think Waterloo has increased taxes too much on its residents in this past term, for sure. The townships, we can look at the double-digit tax increases they've been wrestling with. The region, forget about it. Not to mention, I already talked about speed cameras, the water problem that we're currently facing. I mean, how much deeper down that rabbit hole do I need to go? Cambridge is not having an easy time getting along these days. If you're following that council, as somebody that does the job that I do, it can provide great fodder. But you got to wonder, because it doesn't seem like they're all drinking from the same cup of tea in Cambridge these days. That's the region as I see it right now. But I think Jason makes a fair point, certainly. As somebody who's in the city of Kitchener, I do appreciate the services we get, the programming we get to enjoy the outdoors and the downtown in the summer. The tax increases that are in line with or just below inflation, which is commendable considering the economic times. They've been doing a very, very good job in Kitchener. That's how I see the region today. If you see it differently, by all means, you can let me know. And anything else you want to talk about on Rant or Rave, phone lines are open to you on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every day, noon till 1, open phone lines, giving you the chance to share your thoughts on the events of the day, the events of this past weekend. Mondays are for your rants or raves. Rant because you're upset about something. Rave because you're not. You're happy. You're feeling the good vibes on this cloudy and gloomy Monday. Let's get back to the phones for John. Good afternoon, John.
Hello, Lord Farwell. Here we go again.
Here we go again with what?
Another conversation.
Oh, I can't wait. What are you bringing for me today?
Well, a couple things. One is the point about there being a sniper at the Paddy's Day thing. It immediately occurred to me that maybe they knew something we didn't. That's a strong possibility. And as for pepper spray, I don't live in Toronto and neither do you, but if I did, I think I might want to carry it because I've talked to some people who do live there, and the things you're seeing in the paper are often just the tip of the iceberg as to what's going on down there. Some areas are just like the Wild West, so I understand that too.
All right, John, I appreciate the call. You are right in line with Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who is asking the federal government to legalize pepper spray so we can all carry our very own personal canister. Reed is with us on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Reed.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. I don't know if this is a rant or a rave or just something that's on my mind. I'm only 24 years old, and I've been married for 2 years, and we're looking to have kids, but this whole sniper thing is making me extremely, extremely scared to bring a kid into this world, because I don't know if I can say it, but what the HE double hockey sticks is going on where we have to bring in a sniper to watch a party. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand the preventative measures to stop something absolutely horrendous from happening, but it makes me extremely scared to bring a kid into this world. Like, I don't get it, but I understand the whole preventative measures, which is amazing, and hats off to all the police, everything like that. But I don't see the point of bringing a kid into this world if this is what's happening.
I can certainly understand that sentiment, Reed, and I've gone over this. I've been thinking about it since the story first started circulating yesterday, and I have landed in this place. Now, I've already gone through the process of bringing kids into this world, but I can understand how unsettling it is, because the fact that, like, if we need this sort of coverage or protection for large-scale public events, I don't know what's going on out there.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't really want to gum up the air here, but like for example, suppose I take my future kid to go see a Rangers game, and we have armed cops walking around the concourse there. Like, I understand, but what message does that send to the kid? Like, oh my God, something could happen, like, wherever, whenever. Like, it's scary.
Reed, I totally understand. I appreciate the call and the perspective from somebody at your age and stage of life. It's funny you bring up a Ranger game, because when I heard this story about the oversight from above on the balcony with the high-powered rifle, it sounds like a game of Clue, right? Colonel Mustard in the library with the wrench. But the last time I had seen a sniper in real life was at a Kitchener Rangers game. I'll tell you why, though. There was a very good reason they were there. As we continue with Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show this afternoon. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a Monday afternoon from noon until 1. We always open the phone lines on Mondays. That is for your rants and or raves. I was telling you before that update with Matt Hutchison. Prior to this weekend, and I only saw the sniper thanks to videos and photos circulating on social media, but the last time I had seen one, Waterloo Regional Police, was at a Kitchener Rangers game, because, I don't know, give or take 15 or so years ago, maybe a little more than that. Would have had to have been. Well, no, Stephen Harper was Prime Minister until 2014. Anyway, Stephen Harper went to a Kitchener Rangers game, and the security detail ensured that there were snipers or people with rifles up in the catwalks at the Memorial Auditorium. And I would not have noticed they were there, except I saw the players during warm-up kind of looking up to the ceiling of the arena. I'm like, what's going on up there? And I looked up, I thought, oh, that's what's going on up there. I don't think the Prime Minister attended St. Paddy's Day on the weekend, but this is what we do by way of oversight for large public gatherings in the modern day. And that, for me, is a very unsettling realization. I guess maybe I was just choosing to ignore it previously. Let's get back to your rants or raves here on the show. Ted is with us. Good afternoon, Ted. Well, hello, Ted. Is anybody there?
Hello, can you hear me?
No, Ted, I cannot. I don't know where you are or where you're trying to get from, but this is not working. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Is that
Ted.
any better?
Whoop. Hello.
Can you hear any better?
Yes, I can. And then we had nothing. Ted, I wanted to hear from you, but whatever phone it was or whatever distance you were calling from, the connection was not sufficient. Try again, though, please. Love to hear from you on the show. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Sue is next on Rant or Rave. Hello, Sue.
And good afternoon to you. I have a rave. This is the first time I've ever done a rave, but it's in regards to Carney's views. And on a smaller model set, my dad was involved in a trust company where he went out all over the place to help people with wills and estates. And this was not an instant snap, snap, snap thing that had to have results right now and then. It was over a term, a long term, depended upon the person, right? And when they passed on, he visited, and he's always been a great dad to me. Always there's this helpful instinct that he had for helping people. And this idea of, to me, Carney without getting jet lag and going all over the different areas to have us to really emphasize our sovereignty, even though it might be over a longer term. This is what we have to enjoy. We have to have the patience to see this fruition. And I just wanted to share that model of my dad and how he helped. So raves to Carney. I'm a former Conservative, but I really feel that he has helped to not just place Canada on the map, but to initiate a positive happening in our country, the Dominion of Canada.
All right, Sue, appreciate the call. It's okay. I think Prime Minister Carney is a former Conservative, too. Certainly a hyper-centrist, maybe a little right of center as a Liberal Prime Minister, but nonetheless, in summary, what I'm hearing from Sue is that she appreciates what Prime Minister Carney is doing on this kind of worldwide tour to shore up or explore new trading opportunities for Canada, which, yes, I agree is a good thing, but I've been kind of stuck on a call we got to that end some weeks ago from somebody who works in business that is very much connected to the United States. And he said, you can try all you want. Like, there is only so much extracting one can do from that massive economy next door that we are so intertwined with. So I support it, but I don't know how we are going to ignore the largest economy in the world that is literally right next door. But I appreciate where you're coming from, Sue, and I don't disagree that what Prime Minister Carney is doing of late is certainly helpful. And nothing will happen overnight, just like we won't extract ourselves completely from that interconnectedness with the United States overnight. Want to go to an email from Nathan to Mike at 570news.com. And Nathan wants to call me out today, too. You know what? Listen, you're right to do that. This was something that I've said since the very beginning on this show, that we are going to call each other on our crap. And Jason called earlier to say, hey, you're using some generalizations there that I don't think are fair. And Jason was right. And Nathan wants to call me out, too. Look, I'm a little bit crankier than usual today. I got some bad news over the weekend. I'm kind of pissed about it. I'm not going to lie to you. I won't go into details, but I'm bringing that, and I need to be better than this. I need to park that at the studio door and come in here and do better. But I will get into Nathan's email because I like the points that he makes, and I want to offer my counterpoint because he asks for my thoughts. So Nathan's calling me out on my claims that the city of Waterloo or the municipalities in general do not want the St. Paddy's Day party to end. Nathan says just because they're not focusing on the solution that you think is best doesn't mean they're not trying to stop the party from occurring. They barricaded the whole street, so clearly they don't want the party to happen, but it makes sense that the students just went to another street. Based on my recent experiences, the students will always find a way to celebrate. I remember when at Queen's, they moved the date of homecoming to around the fall reading week to avoid wild street parties. But what ended up happening was 2 weekends of partying, one which was false homecoming and then the other which was actual homecoming, which then required twice as many resources and coordination from the university and the city of Kingston. So I don't think moving reading week will help. I view this problem as more of an opportunity. I think that the universities should work together to host a St. Paddy's Street Festival with controlled access and focused activities. It would help to reduce rampant alcohol consumption, reduce underage consumption, and perhaps create a new opportunity for the community to come together. Look at it this way. We have lots of events for different groups of people. Maybe we need to create a new event that caters to the young folks. Curious to know your thoughts. Nathan, appreciate the email. Appreciate you calling me out on my crap. And I think it's a fair point, just because they won't adopt my solution to this or my proposal to this. Here's the thing, and this is where my frustration stems from. Yes, we put up barricades, and the party still goes on. But for how long have we been putting up these barricades? This is at least 3 years, if not 4, and the party hasn't stopped. So why do we just do the same thing year after year? We say we want the party to stop, but what are we doing differently to try and stop it? I don't see anything. Last year it was a court injunction. This year it's a community safety event and a nuisance bylaw that we're reminding people of. I'm sorry, but so what? We're not doing anything different. And we did try a long time ago. Well, how long ago? I'd have to look it up. 10 years, 11, I don't know. But there was an attempt at one time to create this St. Paddy's Day party. And we set up a big tent at Seagram Stadium, University Stadium, and we had a wristband policy and all these things, and it didn't work. Now, did we stick with it long enough? I don't think so. Again, I'm with you on your idea, Nathan. Let's turn this into a thing. Let's make the community a St. Paddy's Day destination. But let's do that then and stop what I believe to be the charade. We want to stop it. Well, if we want to stop it, we got to try different things. And I won't claim to know what Kingston did and what the outcome was when they moved homecoming, according to Nathan's email, to close to the fall reading week. I'm not talking about close to. I'm saying if this was reading week, like it's March break right now, right? What's the vibe out there in the community right now, right? Things shift. The entire community shifts on its axis because it's March break, because school is out, right? If this was reading week, students would not be on campus. They would be somewhere sunny, or they would be back home wherever home is. They would not be here to hold their party. They wouldn't be. So you just make reading week now. And the fact that this hasn't been tried frustrates me to no end. It really does. I know it wouldn't be convenient for the schools. I know the schools would say, well, this is too close to the end of the term. This is too close to exams. Tough noogies. We don't want the party. So if we don't want the party, we move reading week. Just try it. Try it next year and see what happens. And if it fails, okay, try something else. I cannot believe that we have not tried this. And it frankly upsets me. It upsets me quite a bit. But that means to me that, do we really want to end it? What are we trying to do to end it? The same thing year after year after year after year? Okay. What's the definition of insanity? Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Mondays, noon to 1, we open the phone lines for your rants and or your raves. Ted is with us. Good afternoon, Ted.
Hey, Mike. So all the call-ins about people being upset or concerned about, including yourself, the officer with the so-called sniper rifle.
There's no so-called, Ted.
Okay. He's there. Somebody took a picture. That's fine.
Yes.
I'm surprised no one else has called in. I'm going to give you a little different perspective because my son was one of the officers patrolling. OPP, by the way, they bring in them from outside. It's not just regional police. Tells me that first of all, this scope on that rifle would be much easier to it gives better view than binoculars. Number two is, would we rather have somebody with maybe a mental illness like the guy that walked into a school in British Columbia and killed 9 or 10 of our kids? I'm sure that wherever there's public gatherings, illegal ones like this or not, that all police forces across the country now take these kinds of precautions, and we should be happy that they're doing that. we should be grateful that they're doing that. For the gentleman that called in and said he was afraid to bring a child into this world to take him to a Rangers hockey game if there's police patrolling with weapons. The police that patrol the Rangers games always have weapons, always have. May not be a sniper rifle.
Well, yeah, they're not. I think what the oh gosh, I feel bad for forgetting his name, but yeah, I think what he was referring to is, people much more looking like military officers or something like that. We know we have, yes, crowd control with regional police officers on duty at every game I go to, for sure.
And I think every other public gathering across the country now, all police forces would be taking this similar kind of precautions just in case there is somebody with, say, a weapon and a mental problem. It's probably standard procedure now. We should be happy they're doing it.
Yeah, you know what, Ted? That's exactly what Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell has said in a statement from Waterloo Regional Police. And I get it. As I said, there's two things here for me. One is the idea, I just can't, I have no doubt that the rifle was never going to be fired. I just can't figure out, at what point you would have to discharge that rifle. And the other thing is, I'm not comfortable, and this is where I've landed mostly today, the more I think about this and the more we talk about it, to Ted's point. The fact that this is standard procedure these days, holy moly. I don't love that. That's all. Pat is next on Rant or Rave. Hello, Pat.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good. My view on the sniper on the roof is that it's unfortunate, but I don't think it's an overreaction. I think it's perhaps an overdue acknowledgement of what this country is actually dealing with. Unfortunately, I think the Canada of 2015 is not the Canada of today. For example, there's some estimates that suggest that there are hundreds of Iranian Revolutionary Guard linked individuals, possibly as many as 700, living in Canada. And I think the security apparatus is playing catch up with some of these threats. And I don't like to see it, but I'm grateful that, the professionals are thinking about this stuff. We've obviously seen an increase in violence since the war in Iran started. And, I think it's prudent for the police to take these measures. I don't like to see it, but again, I think it is prudent for them to act this way.
Yeah, Pat, I appreciate the call. I'm reminded of a conversation I had on an old talk show I hosted on Rogers TV a long time ago, and it was with the head of our cyber crimes unit here at the Regional Police. And that's something I don't want to think about, the places on the internet that they have to go to police and patrol things like child pornography. I don't even want to know, but I guess burying one's head in the sand is the alternative, and I don't really want to do that either. So to Pat's point, an overdue acknowledgement. It's a scary world. It's a bit of a dangerous world out there. This is my Waterloo. It's my Waterloo.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
My Kitchener.
I know.
I love the place.
So do I.
And I wanted to be like it was. Oh, we're sticking our head in the sand, aren't we?
I think
so. But anyway, no, but we would like it to be like it was, but that's impossible. The subject I wanted to bring up was what would you think that should be done with this Mein Kampf signed book? What, in your estimation, should be done?
With the book?
Yeah, the guy has the book.
Well, you want what should be done with the guy or what should be done with the book?
What should be done with the book?
I don't think anything should be done with the book.
Well, that's my opinion. That's so why he was, left because of it. You can't change history by burning books.
Well, there you go. Nobody suggested that the book be burned, in fairness. But he did resign his position, his appointed position as Niagara Regional Chair, because he was in possession of the book and it caused a stir. Mark is next on Rant or Rave. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Mike. You're an easygoing guy, Mike.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And very transparent. So what happened to you over the weekend, Mike, that really peeved you off?
Well, you know what? I knew as soon as I opened my mouth, because I try to be upfront with you. And just, don't worry about it, Mark. I'll get over it.
I'm not worried about it. I'd just like to know, Mike.
Yeah, I know, buddy. Well, you know what? Next time we run into each other, we'll have a chat.
Okay, Mike.
Okay, buddy. Care. You too. Thanks for the call. Sometimes my mouth is too big. Mike, you're next on Rant or Rave.
Michael. Number 335 here.
What's up, buddy? Farwell's Force member number right there.
Yes, sir. I hope your mood gets a little better. But, but Mikey, I was, last Thursday when I was watching the Leaf game there, they said a couple of things that were weird. They said there might only be one 50-goal scorer this year in the NHL. Maybe not, but maybe one. And they mentioned about Sarnia Junior B. I didn't catch the
Sarnia Legionnaires went 0 for the entire season, Mikey.
0 for 50. And I thought, I wondered if you heard that. And I didn't catch the name, but when they said it, I went, seriously, nobody goes 0 for 50. You think, and like the one guy said, you think a goalie would have stole a game or something,
Mikey. The next year, the Leafs might go 0-82.
No, Mikey, we'll be all right. We'll be all right. Don't you worry about that.
Okay.
We made it 9 years in a row, and the league asked us to take a year off the playoffs, Mikey. We'll be back next year.
I got it, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to be heard that.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the call. And I love the optimism. This year, we're not going to make the playoffs, but that's okay. We made the playoffs 9 years in a row. Even though we made the playoffs 9 years in a row as Leafs fans, it's not like we won anything while we were in the playoffs except a round. Oh, it's tough being a Leafs fan. You know what's going to improve everybody's mood is that big Rangers game tomorrow night versus the Flint Firebirds. And we've got a whole show lined up for you tomorrow between now and then. So I'll come back tomorrow morning at 9, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I invite you to join me at that time. You're always welcome to be a part of the conversation on the show. My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.